Mr. Sasha Angus to item 5B. Also add delegations from Mr. Kim Smythe and also Tim McGrath. Winchester to item 8A. And also we're replacing the pages number 20. I believe Councillor Brennan has a notice of motion to bring to the floor.
Okay, and that's going to be under 14A, I believe, on that one. So we'll ask for a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And under item 4, the motion to adopt the minutes, and we'll do A and B together, if we could, please. Moved. Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And now we'll move into presentations, and we'll turn it over to Councillor Patchy, who I believe will introduce the speaker. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship, very much. Good evening. It's my pleasure to introduce the indomitable Bob Coon, who has had a very busy life this past year. Not only because he was very much involved in getting us on the right track at the Cultural Committee with regards to selecting a poet laureate, he also was instrumental in not only leading the committee, but the public opportunities, and certainly worked in great cooperation with the Commission to get the cultural plan started and get it to where it is now. Now, I was going to leave it at that, but I'm going to set the stage for Mr. Coon and for Mr. Angus by just reading one paragraph out of the cultural plan in the prelude, because it really spells it out in a very good way as to what this is all about. So, Your Worship, in the language of the Nanaimo, Nanaimo means gathering place. And Nanaimo is a gathering place for a diverse and growing population. It is a community of communities rooted in a strong heritage and looking forward to a bright future. Without culture, people may not choose to live here. Culture brings history, personality, and uniqueness. Culture increases connection and community. It creates synergy and encourage and reason for celebration. It reflects and honors all cultures. It supports and encourages all creative people, from artists to creative professionals, resulting in increased economic prosperity. Mr. Coon.
Welcome, sir.
It's my pleasure to introduce Naomi Beth Walken as Nanaimo's first poet laureate. Council has selected a writer who's already done much to raise the awareness of poetry and the literary arts in Nanaimo. Naomi is an established author and a prolific writer and poet. She loves to express herself with the written word and is excited about inspiring others to discover their creative talents. Naomi is a delightful lady with a quick wit. We are excited about having her as Nanaimo's literary ambassador for the next 3 years. So I'd like to congratulate Naomi on her appointment and invite her up to the podium. She's got 2 poems to read for us.
Okay.
Thanks,
welcome.
Bob. Your Worship and Councillors, I'm honoured to have been selected as the inaugural Poet Laureate of Nanaimo, and I thank you for confirming me. At 82, I promise to do my very best to live out my term. I'd like to read you a couple of short poems in gratitude. I'm writing my own memoirs at the moment, and having just read a history of Nanaimo, about which I knew nothing, I imagined the city also writing its own memoirs and all the things that it would have to consider, such as what to leave in and what to take out. So here's a little poem I wrote about that. It's called If Nanaimo Wrote Its Memoirs. When a city writes its memoirs, it's no different from you and I writing ours. We tend to rest on moments of glory, as the city would, on the opening of a new mine or the movement of shipping, times for dancing at the waterfront or gathering in the park. When a city writes its memoirs, it comes, as do ours, with the distortion of fairground mirrors, the trimmings of a topiary bush, and all the tricks that looking backwards plays. When a city writes its memoirs, it is as if it is drawing up a ledger, here red ink, here black, and here a blurring of the two. Yet reckoning must be done, as we too should evaluate our years. And when it is, no lingering in the nostalgia of good times or the festering bitterness of regrets. No, then is the time to turn a fresh page, a page full of promise as to where the city and we might go next. Thank you. I have so many people to thank for encouraging my writing over the years. So when I'm in any kind of gathering like this, I like to read my thank you poem so I can catch a few more people in my net. It's called Thank You Frenzy. Thank you, Poetry Gabriola and the League of Canadian Poets for keeping the wolf from the door, and to the Sounder for touting such writing skills as I have, and to the CBC for allowing my voice to occasionally get on the air, and to the folks who come to my workshops, for they help pay the mortgage, and the folks who come to my readings, who keep me alert so that I can keep them alert. And thank you to the folks who buy my books, and even the folks who don't buy my books but borrow them from the library, and to the folks who stand around in bookstores reading my books and put them back on the shelves with the face outwards, for they too do me a service. And thanks to my twin, who is often unwittingly the butt of my wit, and to my daughter, who lays my books out when she feels like it, although I remind her that I had to change her diapers whether I felt like it or not. And to my son, who calls on birthdays and the day after Mother's Day with a few welcome words. And thanks to my husband, who criticizes many aspects of my being, thus keeping me in the here and now, when I tend to stray to other times, so that I can remember details, such as the fact that he prefers the toilet paper be placed so that the paper rolls from the front rather than from the back, but will put out with it pulling from the back so long as I'm consistent, which I'm not. And a thank you to my lucky stars, whatever Cancer with Cancer rising and my moon in Virgo might mean. And from the stars, it's a mere hop, skip, and jump to thanking the galaxies and the ends of the universe, where apparently the Big Bangs is to be followed endlessly by the Big Crunch. Meanwhile, providing me with just the right amount of oxygen and just the correct degree of gravity to allow me to sit on the deck, musing on life and writing poetry of a modest significance. Thank you.
Yeah, very good.
When we started the process of developing a cultural plan for Nanaimo, one of the things that became clear is that people really understood that arts and culture was an economic driver for Nanaimo. But we wanted to quantify that. And so we were wondering how we were going to do that. And we were fortunate that the Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation decided to commission a report called the Arts and Cultural Economic Impact Study. And so that was great. And Sasha's here to give us a report on the findings of that study. Sasha?
Good. Sure.
Your Worship, members of council. That's why I'm in the economic development business and not in the poet laureate business, because I'm nowhere near as eloquent. As Bob mentioned, this has been a wonderful project that we've been working with staff on a host of different indicators, which we released about a week and a half ago. And there are a few sectors where we didn't have as much information as we would have liked. And so one of the things we wanted to do is really focus on where we could collect data and really fully understand the breadth of our local economy, as well as some sectors that we thought were important economic magnets for the years to come. And so I wanted to quickly go through what the mission of the Development Corporation is to build a prosperous community through economic opportunity. And increasingly, as we talk to businesses around the community, as well as the ones we hope to attract here, arts and culture and the vibrancy that we enjoy from our quality of life are equally as important as our business math and our cost of doing business. When we're looking at attracting them here, we really need to be able to attract them on the numbers, but increasingly our ace up our sleeve is our quality of life. And arts and culture we knew intrinsically was a big part of that. And so I don't want to be in a position to try and put math as far as arts and culture goes, because the fabric of the community that it is, the piece of people that it brings to our community and the folks that it attracts are incredibly important to our economic vibrancy as well as our cultural vibrancy. But we've managed when we can to showcase what the sector provides, why it's an important part of our vibrancy, and why it's an important economic contributor. In that note, the cultural portal that the city had developed was one of the starting blocks that we took. We also looked to best practices at the provincial level with BC Statistics as far as how they quantify a sector that can be very broad in nature. And so we took the BC Stats definitions, and we actually were quite conservative as far as who we decided to keep in the circle and who we had out of the circle. At the provincial level, they also include folks like architects, engineers, and others in their definition of arts and culture. And we were a bit more prescriptive that way, that we were making sure that we weren't double counting and that we were cautious about the economic contribution that the various portions of the arts and culture sector contribute. And so wanted to show you a quick piece of, which I think is an interesting graph. This was done by Van Struth and Associates a few years back, but it really highlights the arts and culture creation and production industry, the opportunity that Nanaimo has, that it's obviously a fairly large sector, but our economic growth potential compared to almost every other community on the island was significantly better than not only the other smaller communities on Vancouver Island, but increasingly the capital region. It was one of the things that I found fascinating about our economic study was really, I guess, the role partly of economic development, but also the intensity that we have as far as its presence in our local community, given the size of our community. For economic development, business retention and expansion is incredibly important. So as we have businesses grow and thrive here, they unfortunately get the siren call of many other communities. And so the more we can do as a community to show that there's a vibrant arts and culture sector, that's a great quality of life, both recreationally and otherwise, is the better chance we have of keeping them here, because their employers are happy and won't want to move. And so in particular, knowledge-based industries, these are companies that can be anywhere. And so our ability to retain them is in part due to our economic vibrancy as well as our cultural vibrancy. And increasingly, as we reach out to other parts of the world, including Victoria and Vancouver, we have a tremendous story to tell. One is quality of opportunity, which we are very competitive on the business numbers, but increasingly the quality of life that those industries demand from their employees, or that their employees require, are things that they're looking at, so that not only do they have something to do, they can afford to do it. When you're in Victoria and Vancouver, your housing costs are exorbitant. Your cost of doing business are worse than are much more expensive than ours. And so if we can show them the entire package, quality of opportunity plus quality of life, it becomes a very compelling marketing message for the region of Nanaimo. As part of that, what we're hearing and what we're seeing from a number of businesses in the community is that talent attraction and retention is very much back on their radar screen. There was a bit of a hiatus over maybe the past couple of years, but increasingly for those technology and knowledge-based industries, they're having a tough time finding the folks that they need. And so having a robust story to tell and show them that if they come to our community, they'll have, again, great quality of opportunity and quality of life becomes incredibly important. And increasingly going forward, we're up against the same demographic forces that most communities are in the country. Our population is aging, our workforce is aging, and so we need to be able to attract bright young minds to the community to make sure that we have the workforce that our employers need to continue to grow in Nanaimo. That being said, let's jump to the good stuff. So the study was undertaken. It took us about 4.5 months to go through, and these findings, I think, are interesting. Obviously, there's a number of different types of contributors to the sector, everyone from part-time artists who sort of help pay the mortgage, so to speak, to folks who are directly employed by cultural institutions. The total economic impact, both direct, induced, and indirect, is $154 million a year. To put that in context, Victoria just went through a similar exercise. For a population that's 3 to 4 times our size, their economic contribution was $177 million. So on a per capita basis, we vastly outperform the capital region as far as arts and culture goes in the community. They directly employ 880 people. They contribute to an additional 1,300 jobs in the community and provide all orders of government about $13 million worth of taxes. This is where we were relatively conservative. A host of these different organizations rely heavily on volunteer hours. And what we heard from the businesses in this sector was that for every 1 employee, they roughly had 5 to 6 volunteers who also participated. Because we couldn't come up with a model that we felt comfortable with to be able to quantify what that economic value is, we decided not to include it. And so while $154 million is a significant number and it's a significant economic contributor, I don't think it fully captures the breadth of the arts and culture sector in the community, which is, again, being conservative, but a good thing. So just wanted to end off by saying thank you again to Council for your support of the NADC. We are, as said, going through a host of these types of reports. The next one we'll be looking at is the technology sector, which this one will go relatively hand in hand with. And so we look forward to providing you with that information when it's available. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Very nice presentation. Very interesting indeed. I might just point out that I think when you were referring to Victoria, you were referring to Greater Victoria as opposed to the city of Victoria.
Capital region, yeah.
In that, yeah, and the significant difference is that the population of the city of Victoria, the corporation of the city of Victoria, is about 6,000 or 7,000 fewer than the city of Nanaimo. So, but when you incorporate the outlying areas, Oak Bay, Esquimalt, Saanich, and so on, it's considerably larger. But based on that, I think our number is even more impressive.
I concur.
So I see no questions from council. Thank you very much. Very good report. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, we have a couple of delegations. Thanks very much.
Your Worship.
Oh, sorry. You didn't finish, Bob? I didn't look up. I apologize.
So Sasha and I were kind of doing our reports together because they're linked. Oh, thank you. And in 2012, the city developed and adopted a corporate strategic plan. And the corporate strategic plan identified cultural vitality as one of the 4 pillars of sustainability. And it's the goal of this strategic plan to balance social, environmental, economic, and cultural perspectives for our future success as a city. These 4 pillars will guide ongoing municipal commitments and decisions in the coming years. To assist in the implementation of the Nanaimo Corporate Strategic Plan, a process to develop a new cultural plan for Nanaimo began. The result of this planning process is a document that outlines a vision, goals, strategies, and actions in 4 key areas. Now, one of the questions that we asked people when we started our community engagement process is, what is culture? And as you can imagine, culture means different things to different people, so it was quite an interesting discussion. But one of the things that became clear, and there was quite a consensus about this, is that culture should have a fairly broad definition in Nanaimo. In other words, culture is not just about the arts. And so the definition that we came up with is this. Culture is what defines us as a community and a people. It is about our history, our values, and our beliefs. It is central to our identity. It is what makes our city unique, distinctive, and vibrant. It is everything that enriches our lives. It is about quality of life and pride of place and makes our city look and feel the way it does. Culture is why people love where they live. Now, why a cultural plan? Why do we plan for culture? Well, there's a number of very important reasons, and I'm going to just read a few of them. Culture is important to determine a clear vision for culture in Nanaimo. and to establish strategies and priorities for future cultural planning and development, to enhance the quality of life and pride of place in Nanaimo, to establish culture as a core part of community building, to leverage our cultural assets and resources for economic prosperity, to support and encourage community wellness and active living, to help implement the corporate strategic plan, and to engage the community and the city in enhancing awareness and understanding of the role of culture in Nanaimo's ongoing evolution as an urban center. So the process that we used was in like a four-phase process, and phase one was done back in the spring of 2012. And this was a phase where we did a lot of research. We looked at plans from other cities. We also looked at publications, books, articles in periodicals about cultural planning. And we also did a cultural assets and resources inventory. And there's about 1,000 entries in that inventory presently. And we put those entries onto our cultural map, which is online now on the city website. Phase two was our visioning and community engagement phase. We did community forums, we did a community vision for culture survey, and we did stakeholder meetings. Phase three is plan preparation, which is the phase that we're in right now. And during the writing of the plan, we also did a lot of stakeholder and community feedback. And we actually went through several versions of the plan just to make sure that we got it right. And we wanted to make sure that we had affirmation from the community that we heard them. And then phase four will be the plan approval and implementation. We're going to have an open house on November the 28th at the museum, 5 to 8 p.m., so hope to see you all there. And in the new year, we're going to ask Council to adopt the final draft of the cultural plan. And then after that, of course, ongoing implementation of the plan. So one of the things that people ask is what we mean when we say cultural assets and resources. And Sasha had a graphic that was similar to this. But this gives you a good idea of what we're talking about. And it's not just about cultural facilities like the Port Theatre and the museum, the library, et cetera, but it's also about cultural organizations. It's about festivals and events, cultural industries, cultural heritage like our heritage buildings and our historical sites, our natural heritage like our beaches and waterfront and significant parkland, our artists, public art, culinary art and food. And you also see sports up there. Now, we actually didn't have sports in there originally. And in fact, we had it in there, we took it out, and then we got so many people complaining about that because they said sports is part of our culture. And so we put it back in. This is just a screen print of our cultural map that you can find on the city website. And basically what that is, it's taking all of our cultural assets and resources and plotting them on a Google map. And you can click on any one of those resources and get more information, more details about that organization or that facility. And there's also a link to their website if you want even more details about that organization. Community engagement and consultation. We did an extensive consultation process over 2 years. We had over 1,000 residents that were involved in surveys, stakeholder meetings, forums, and workshops. And we had over 2,000 comments received from our Vision for Culture survey. So we had lots of feedback from the community. One of the things we wanted to do when we started this out, we wanted to make sure that this was a true community plan. It wasn't just something that a consultant came in and wrote for us, and it wasn't something that staff just wrote either. It was the result of a lot of community engagement and the help of our technical team. Which we had involved throughout the process. And our technical team, by the way, was made up of all of our cultural managers, professional cultural managers in town. People like the manager of the Port Theatre and the museum, the Conservatory of Music, etc. We developed a vision statement with the community, and everybody is quite happy with this statement that Nanaimo will be a healthy and prosperous community that recognizes the importance of creativity and cultural vitality for quality of life and place. We developed 4 key themes from the community feedback that we got. Number 1 is strengthening the creative sector, the creative economy, connectivity, connecting people, community, and ideas, and cultural spaces and places. And in each of these 4 themes, we have goals, strategies, and actions. So the first one is strengthening the creative sector. Partnerships and collaborations. Strengthening our creative sector will take coordinated effort from all stakeholders in the culture sector, as well as the community at large. And so our goal is to build stronger relationships with, between cultural organizations and businesses, and increase opportunities for working together to build capacity within organizations. Cultural asset mapping, which we talked a little bit about already, but it's a tool that is used to identify and map community cultural assets and resources, and to identify opportunities for investing in future cultural development. It is also to demonstrate the breadth and variety of cultural activity in our community. Integration and sustainability. Incorporating cultural components into city planning and development recognizes culture as an important part of overall community building. Integrating culture into community planning seeks to make communities physically attractive, socially and economically vibrant, and sustainable. So we want to be able to look through a cultural lens when we're planning and making decisions. Investing in culture as a core part of community building can generate significant returns in the form of jobs, attracting and retaining talent, business investment, and in building a culturally vibrant and prosperous community where people want to live or visit. Governance. The community has told us that it is important to establish a new governance structure in Nanaimo to encourage and facilitate wise investments, bold action, and focus the community support and energy on cultural development. And there's 2 quite significant recommendations in that section. One is the formation of a creative city commission that would report directly to council. And the second one is to develop or to form a cultural services division as part of Parks, Recreation, and Culture with a dedicated cultural manager. The second key area is the creative economy, which Sasha talked a fair bit about. Nanaimo's changing from being solely a resource-based economy to an economy that includes creative, knowledge-based industry dependent on skilled creative professionals. Creativity is a fundamental source of wealth in the global economy. It is important for Nanaimo to elevate the value of cultural planning with clearly stated strategies for generating wealth in this new economy. And the NEDC Arts and Culture Economic Impact Study confirms that culture is an important economic driver for our community. Quality of life and place. Planning for culture is planning for quality of life and place. It's culture that enriches our lives by providing enjoyment and appreciation of all creative endeavors. Culture helps create a community that is welcoming, inclusive, compassionate, and supportive of all our citizens. Focusing on quality of life and quality of place initiatives will create a desirable city where people want to live or visit. The creative industries. Economic growth today depends increasingly on ideas, knowledge, innovation, and creativity, in addition to resources in manufacturing. Cities that are culturally vibrant can be successful in attracting and retaining creative professionals that bring innovative, highly technical, and creative industries with them. This will help drive future economic growth in Nanaimo. Cultural tourism. Many travelers today are cultural tourists who are looking for great cultural experiences when they visit places. They are looking for an opportunity to learn from different cultures and about the unique history and heritage of a place. They enjoy cultural events, festivals, museums, art galleries, heritage attractions, and other interesting things to see and do. Events and festivals. Nanaimo's events and festivals are an important part of how we celebrate who we are as a city and as a people. Festivals should celebrate our diversity and showcase our local cultural resources and artistic talent to both residents and visitors. Culinary tourism. Local food and wine go hand in hand with arts, culture, heritage, entertainment, and events and festivals. People that participate in these activities are often looking for local, unique culinary experiences. Promoting this combination of arts, entertainment, food, and wine can be a big attraction to residents and visitors and a significant contribution to Nanaimo's economy. The third key theme was connectivity. And in our extensive community engagement and outreach with Nanaimo and area residents, one of the most surprising findings was their awareness of and support for improving the connectivity for area residents. They define this in several ways. Physical connectivity, such as transportation, harbor, roads, walking and cycling paths, linkages, and so on, but also, perhaps even more importantly, linkages between people and organizations. The community has told us that greater connectivity between people, places, and ideas is important to them for a livable city. And then cultural spaces and places. Cultural spaces and places play a key role in pride of place in our community that attracts and retains residents. Our cultural spaces and places help to make Nanaimo welcoming, beautiful, and interesting. One of the best ways to enhance quality of life in Nanaimo is to ensure that artists and cultural organizations have affordable, quality space in which to provide arts and cultural services to their residents. Okay. Oh, there we go. Capital Asset Priority Plan. This is part of the Cultural Spaces and Places section. And one of the things that people told us is that there were a number of outdoor spaces and a number of indoor spaces that they thought were priorities. One of them that came right to the forefront was the Harborfront Walkway extension. And this is also part of the corporate strategic plan. So there's a desire there to expand that walkway right from the departure bay right through to the cruise ship terminal. And I think we've been hearing that a lot. Also the Diana Krall Plaza improvements. We started that project a few years ago, but we haven't finished it. So a lot of people have the opinion that that plaza is not, is kind of dead. You know, it's not very lively. Right by the street there is fine. It's, you know, they did some improvements there, but the rest of it's just brick. Then an outdoor performance space, and this would be like a purpose-built outdoor performance space that could be used for all kinds of performing arts, music, dance, and theater. And then cultural facilities, the Art Gallery Development Plan, which Council's already approved. Small performance spaces, again, purpose-built small performance spaces. There's a real need for that. And we do have 25 Victoria Road, which is being well used. And so these people do need a place to perform. The Port Theatre Studio Theatre, that's been on the books for quite a number of years now. I think it's about 10 years, something like that, right from when the Port Theatre was built. And so we're hoping that that's going to be something that comes to the forefront in the future. And then, although controversial, a lot of people are still of the opinion that we do need to look at a sport and entertainment center. So moving ahead and plan implementation. So the next steps, I've already mentioned, is the open house on November the 28th. So we want to take this plan back to the public again and make sure that we've heard them. So we want to affirm that we've actually heard what they said and that they can reflect their ideas in the plan. So this is at the museum, and then the final draft that will be recommended to Commission and Council will come in the new year. So the implementation plan identifies who is responsible for taking the lead role in implementing the strategy or action, and any internal or external partners who will need to be involved. And it also identifies what the time frame is for completing each strategy or action. Cross-departmental collaboration will be essential for building on the city's corporate vision of including cultural vitality as a pillar of sustainability in our community. Communication and cooperation at all levels will be critical for the plan's success. A strong governance structure will be essential as well to ensure that the resources are available to implement this plan. Strong support will be needed throughout the city, including council, senior management, and all city departments. And of course, continued community engagement and consultation. And then the last slide, monitoring our outcomes. This cultural plan for a creative Nanaimo gives a comprehensive look at Nanaimo's cultural and creative community and offers timely and important recommendations to enhance and develop it in the future. With ongoing community support and participation, Nanaimo's cultural plan will provide strategic direction and clear vision for advancing the culture and prosperity agendas and opportunities. It is an exciting time to see Nanaimo's future emerging and to envisage the opportunities and possibilities that can shape our cities for years to come. As the city increasingly looks at those through the cultural lens, and as our artists, artisans, creators, and architects of the future participate fully in the planning and development of our city, Nanaimo's future is bright. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Kuhn. Very interesting indeed. And also thank you to Sash Angus, who started earlier too. Any questions for the delegation? Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Sasha. I appreciate it. Just one quick question. On page 18 of the assets and resources, as we determined the $134 million direct and indirect contributions of culture, if you will, to the city of Nanaimo, I'm wondering if all those trigger points were included to arrive at the $134 million.
I don't believe
In the
so.
SWOT
That-
analysis.
I don't think so. That chart that I put up there, not all of those were included in the economic impact study.
No, there wasn't. Yeah, we've been fairly prescriptive against the provincial model, so we didn't include all the ones that were included.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob, Sasha. The work's going forward. I appreciate that. I have one problem with strategic planning. You have to use all 4 pillars, and you have to explain all 4 pillars. And we get stuck on one pillar all the time. It's probably not your fault, but when our strategic plan says we have 4 pillars, that's economy, social equity, environment, and culture, we must judge everything across those 4 pillars. Now, you've done a very good job on explaining the cultural vitality part, but the social indicators in that I want to see more of sometimes. And I want to see all 4 of those pillars judged. Even if one doesn't work out well, if it hasn't got positive things for the 4, I want to see that in a report, because I need that. That's why the strategic plan is important to me. We had a 2005 Parks Master Plan. We had our cultural strategy in 2008, and the world dynamically changed after 2008. Now we're redoing our culture plan before we're doing our master plan. Can someone answer me that? Why we wouldn't do our Parks Master Plan again before we redid our cultural plan? Because we did the master plan for parks was 2005. We did a 2008 cultural strategy. Now we're back to cultural strategy before we're back to master planning. So I wondered.
Your Worship, not knowing the exact timing, but clearly out of the strategic plan that Council undertook, this was one of the priorities, and so we needed to know more information about culture. And it's not to make it a priority. I think Councillor Johnstone coined this. It's not to make culture any more of a priority than anything else. It's to bring it on par with some of the other issues that we're dealing with.
Thank you.
Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Mr. Kuhn. This outdoor performance theatre, what does that look like in
It'd be like an outdoor amphitheater with proper acoustics and proper electricity, for amplification, things like that. And a proper staging area.
Okay, to hold how many people?
We haven't designed it, of course, so we don't really know. I can't really answer that at this point, but.
Thank you. Follow up, Your Worship. There's, you talked about significant resource requirement, and you surveyed roughly 1,000 of our 87,000 people. Can you tell me where the suggestions were made as to funding sources?
Funding sources?
Yeah, you said that there's going to be significant resources required.
Like in terms of money?
Yes.
Not quite sure that I understand the question, but the funding that we talk about here is the funding that come from the city.
Okay.
There's a few, I think there's 2 or 3 recommendations that recommend additional funding to arts organizations and events and festivals, and that would be city funding.
And Your Worship, this plan, like many plans that we bring forward to Council, has a bunch of operational issues and decisions that Council will have to make, and those will be coming forward as part of the budget deliberations.
Thank you.
Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Bob. Thank you to your 11 members of the team and to Councillor Pachi as chair of the Cultural Committee as well. In answer to your question, Bill, to me, it's always been a dream that Vancouver Island, Nanaimo, could have a summer theatre that could equal the Prince Edward Island Festival every year. History of our coal mining, We Too, and the Dunsmuir story. And in Maffeo Sutton Park, was in the plan in the corner of Maffeo Sutton Park. So I think that we have to think big and think futuristic, and it'll happen. Summer theatre in Vancouver Island would be a draw, that people would come and stay for 3 or 4 days and see all the plays we had to offer. The number of people that provided input to this, the 1,000 plus, I believe that's the largest contingent, the largest number of people ever providing public input to any survey.
Oh.
Yeah. So thank you for that. So there's a huge amount of community interest.
Good, thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Kuhn, for your presentation. I actually don't have a question, or I just want to make a comment, and I just want to say I'm really happy to see where the cultural plan is headed. We have spaces such as Diana Krall Plaza, which I would say, and as you've already indicated, are currently underutilized, and it's nice to see that the plan is actually reflecting that. We need to find a way to make it a better public space, and especially for the performing arts. Performing arts or cultural vitality in the sense of, I'm not a painter, but that type of art, all the different aspects of it. So I'm really appreciative that it looks at all aspects, including the transportation and mobility side of the strategic plan as well. So I commend you, and I actually look forward to the finished project when it comes forward to council in the new year.
Thank you.
Councillor Kipp again.
Thank you very much. It's not really to Bob, and that's more to, I'd like to ask a question of Councillor Johnson. Did you refer to the cultural plan, the 1,000 people, that was the biggest response for here in Nanaimo for any sort of survey?
I believe so. That fact was presented to me. That was the largest number of
Well, we had 1,300 people in the OCP in 1996 respond, so it's over 1,000, but let's just know this. I think maybe in a culture one. Another one to Councillor McKay's point is the considerable investment. That's the problem to me, is where I don't see the 4 pillars. Because we talk about considerable investment, but we don't have a financial model with it. And although we're early in the stage, to really plan and then design and then construct things, we need to have the financial background. And you're saying you want this draft to come back to us in January. Will you have the financial, like with these cost centers under implementation, will there be some cost attached?
A lot of these things will be done on a project-by-project basis, so we're not asking council for all the money to do all of this stuff right away.
Okay, if I can continue on that. It says up to 2020, 6 years and maybe beyond. So we're only 6 years out on this plan.
5 to 7 years, yeah.
5 to 7 years, so those prices are going to come pretty quick in 5 to 7 years.
Your Worship,
this is to staff, Bob. Sorry, it's not really.
This is like any other plan. It's a plan that council would adopt, meaning that it's your strategy on how you want to proceed with cultural facilities and cultural ideas in the community. The OCP is full of operational issues that we are projecting to do that were community-based. And this is just another document that we'll have to sort through and prioritize and balance priorities as part of the budget.
If I can continue, that's exactly to my point. Our OCP, which is supposed to be a land use planning document, is really stretched into the strategic planning realms. It talks about cultural vitality and that within our OCP. And we're starting to develop a lot of plans. And like I say, we've done cultural plans for quite a few years now and have trouble implementing. We've done parks plans. We've done a lot of emergency management planning. We're having trouble implementing because I think we're continuing to plan. So for me, the cost is hugely important when I try and balance between all of our departmental needs. Thank you.
Okay, I might just say that, for the longest time, I think a number of us have felt that arts and culture really is a huge economic generator. And it wasn't really until NEDC and possibly Parks and Rec got together and came up with some figures. And I'd like to think that they're accurate, and I think it indicates to most of us that this is something we're supporting, and I think it's all about. And I think maybe to Councillor Kipp's point, I think this is just something that we're starting. It's early in the stage on it. It may have been visited previously, but I think we're looking at it again with new eyes, hopefully, and a better understanding of the financial impact that it can bring us. So I think it's a great idea, and I appreciate your information. And we have Councillor Brennan.
I just want to congratulate everyone who was involved in this and to thank the community for the input that they brought to this this whole exercise. I attended several of the sessions and I was really impressed by the quality of information and feedback that we got from citizens, and I look forward to the implementation. I think I might have heard in the background that it wasn't 1,000, it was 2,000. So that is a significant number of surveys and input received from the community. And so job well done. Thank you, Bob.
Okay, Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. Just as a partial response to Councillor Kipp, we last year created the fourth pillar of sustainability, that being cultural vitality. And I look at this plan at our first opportunity to put some meat on that pillar. It's a very lovely thing to say we're going to have that pillar, but we need to do something with it. And so when it comes to the harmony that is supposed to come between this particular pillar and the environment and the economy and social equity, then I am sure we can achieve that. But we need to know what this pillar looks like, and this pillar, this plan, will give us that to a large extent. Thank you, Worship.
Okay, Councillor Kipp.
Thank you very much. No one should ever suggest that I don't support arts, culture, sports in the community.
I don't think he suggested.
But when I hear money coming in, and it's a big pie, but I don't see anybody eating the pie, it confuses me. If somebody is there telling me we're making $145 million, it's going to cost me some money in business. I know that. And you have to spend money to make money. And so how much are we spending to how much we make, right? And that's always a paradigm for me. For me, it's about spending. And I support the arts. I think people did. I went to some of the sessions. I think have done a phenomenal job. I hosted a long time ago one of the first arts and culture open houses we had years ago. Did the brochures, promoted it 20 years ago. So I guess I want to know the cost of it, and I support the arts. I'm one of the only ones that danced in tights on the stage at the Port Theatre. And you will be. Yeah, I will be the only one.
And it's never been done since. So. Anyway.
Once was enough.
Yeah, once was enough. Anyway, thank you very much. I appreciate it, Mr. Kuhn, and also to Mr. Angus. Excellent presentation, and looking forward to more information as it comes down the road. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Now, we have a couple of delegations. Mr. Kim Smythe, Chief Executive Officer, Greater Nanaimo Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Smythe, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Kim Smythe. I live at 5291 Laguna Way. I'm here in my capacity as Chief Executive Officer. I've only been in the job a week. I forgot my title already. Of the Greater Nanaimo Chamber of Commerce. I'm speaking about Nanaimo's new cultural plan as presented by Bob Kuhn tonight. Last week, the community began receiving snippets of information from a study commissioned by the NEDC identifying the economic impact of arts, culture, and the creative economy. Sasha expanded on some of that tonight. Without a lot of analysis and study, the result seems to be both surprising and very impressive. Clearly, having this information in front of us as we wade into the final stages of the cultural planning process is very helpful. Those who are involved in arts, culture, and the local creative economy know that what they are doing is worth something, but breaking down exactly where that value lies and quantifying it as a community helps Council make choices and decisions. It also helps the business community understand the important role culture plays in Nanaimo's economy. We're fortunate that completion of the report could be timed to coincide with some of the decisions that this cultural plan challenges us to make. One of my favorite references in the 70-some page report here is the acknowledgement that Nanaimo is changing from being solely a resource-based economy to an economy that includes a creative, knowledge-based sector dependent on skilled professionals. Creativity is a fundamental source of wealth in our global economy today. In fact, innovation has surpassed manufacturing as the main source of wealth in this changing economy in Canada. It is important for Nanaimo to elevate the value of planning for the creative economy and meld it with social, economic, and environmental planning with clearly stated strategies for generating growth. The draft cultural plan is interesting from many perspectives. While some of us automatically think of the symphony, the art gallery, the museum, and the Port Theatre as the core of culture in Nanaimo, this plan opens our mind to the very expansive subject that is culture. The plan describes the vital relationships that exist between heritage, tourism, foods and agriculture, the environment, First Nations, and even transportation and connectivity as part of our culture. Perhaps since cultural vitality was identified as one of the pillars of sustainability in the corporate plan, we should not be surprised to see a definition that takes us well beyond the arts experience. The plan before you was developed over a long period of time. It utilizes a diverse and broad set of inputs from the community, and it freely admits to being a dynamic work in progress. It is incredibly deep, and I think it adequately describes the complicated interactions that connect various disciplines and the crossovers between our community's pillars of sustainability. The community and council have already demonstrated their support for culture as it was previously understood. One outcome of the plan is that this broader understanding will lead to broader support from a broader community. One of the greatest benefits of the plan when completed is that Nanaimo will have a roadmap for its cultural future so that we can make deliberate choices along our journey and not just let events unfold where opportunities can be missed. The value of planning is so important to business that a colleague of mine uses a quote from Confucius as part of her regular email signature. Confucius said, "For all affairs, let there be adequate preparation. With preparation, there will be no calamitous issues." And I'm too old to believe that planning and preparation eliminates all chances of calamity, but it sure helps us see the signs come up before it smacks us in the face. Just one more reason to applaud this plan. In closing, the Greater Nanaimo Chamber of Commerce urges Mayor and Council to adopt this relatively new consideration of the expanded definition of culture and to weigh carefully the importance of the sector to our economy, its contribution to our quality of life, and to our future as a successful city. The Chamber is not prepared to endorse all of the recommendations of implementation at this time. This is a matter for further debate and forethought, but we do hope the city would continue considering prudent and wise investment in this sector. As part of that, the Chamber supports the current budget planning process, which provides a high level of scrutiny, especially right now with senior management's microscope on parks, recreation, and culture. We strongly encourage this to continue so that planning for affordable, cost-effective implementation, along with some departmental reorganization, can move forward and help us prepare for a new economic future. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I see no questions at this point. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
Now we have another delegation from Mr. Tim McGrath. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, Council. My name is Tim McGrath. I'm at 459 Prideaux. Councillor Johnson, I do agree that maybe a summer theatre would be a good idea, but just like the Shaw Festival, the majority of it is paid for by private industry and self-generated monies through volunteers and many other things. Very little, very, very little of it comes from the City of Stratford. Now, I want to thank the city staff for preparing the report. I also want to compliment the cultural and arts community for helping Nanaimo to reach this point in its arts and cultural diversity. Most of the arts and cultural community sure do their best to encourage volunteers, and they do their share in fundraising and obtaining sponsorship to help maintain their economic sustainability of the various endeavors. I was at a recent council meeting, though, when some questions by city councillors could not be answered. Is there somewhere in this plan that sets out guidelines about what extent should the city fund a particular facility? For how long should the city fund that facility? And on what's expected from the facility in return? To ensure cultural and arts sustainability, what is the plan going to do to reach that economic sustainability and independence? And these are questions that are raised by some of the councillors just this evening. I look at the Chemainus Theatre and the theatre out on Ross Road, and they support all of their own cultural and arts, all without monies from the municipalities. So does the city's cultural plan include a method on how we get there? I look at the section in governance, and it's somewhat lacking. So I hope when the final report comes forward that it is much more robust on how the measures of governance and when the money is being spent, the return that we're getting. Currently, the situation with the performing arts, there's a need for small venues, and we now have two facilities competing for funding. One facility has a solid business plan. They have a large number of volunteers, and they are really making an effort to reach that economic sustainability. And I would really commend the Port Theatre for their efforts. On the other hand, this City Council has also seen the other side of the problem. A facility that has appeared requesting funding who can't answer simple questions. Like, what other funding have you raised? How many volunteers do you have? How many societies or participants do you have? I'm hoping that the city's cultural plan will address this obvious difference. What does the cultural plan contain for economic sustainability? And I'm hoping it's not just the taxpayer. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no questions. Thank you very much. Now, moving on to 8A, medical marijuana BC assessment. The purpose to provide council with information regarding the assessment of land for farm purposes in relation to rezoning application number RA325 at 1100 Mon Road. Prior to the application going to public hearing on 05 December 2013, and to recommend steps to address the issue. We do have a delegation. I understand Tanya Winchester is here on behalf of Lafayette, is that pronounced right? Ventures, and I think you just were going to answer questions, but if you wish to speak.
Your Worship
please.
and Council members, if it pleases, Tanya Winchester. I am a director at Lafayette Ventures, and I am here today to represent Lafayette, be present for any questions that may need to be asked by council members, as well as reiterate our desire to find a mutually beneficial solution so that medical marijuana production can be produced at the 1100 Mon Road. So I am here just to represent Lafayette and answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, I'm not sure. There may be some questions coming. I can just say for my part, and it's something that we've already discussed previously, that I would like assurance that Nanaimo, in consideration for allowing the use of industrial land, would get a return on our investment in the form of property taxes. And so I understand the covenant is something that the company would consider signing and agreeing to.
That is correct, Your Worship. We have had discussions with our legal counsel, and a Section 219 covenant is something that I believe the staff will be recommending, and we are willing to do that. I also just want to reiterate our desire to be a positive member in society and in Nanaimo to contribute with jobs and economic benefits in other areas. So we hope that the rezoning won't be stopped without further conversation as to those benefits.
Okay, we have Councillor Kipp. Go ahead.
American-based venture?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Are you an American-based venture? Your company registered in America or Canadian?
No, Lafayette Ventures is a BC incorporated company.
Okay, Councillor Bestwick.
I'd just like to move staff's recommendations if there's no other discussion.
I see no further questions from that. And then, is there a seconder? Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Appreciate the input. Moving on to item B, 2013 Community Service Grant Application. And I just want to reconfirm that the motion that we don't have to do them seriatim, and 1, 2, and 3 was what I understood the motion to be. Or do you want them seriatim?
Your Worship, it's up to you. You can do a seriatic or all at once.
Well, no, I think the intent of the motion was to incorporate the recommendations 1, 2, and 3 on it, and I believe the seconder supported that as well. Okay, moving on to the 2013 Community Service Grant Program. The purpose is to outline the Social Planning and Advisory Committee's recommendations on an allocation of the second round of 2013 Community Service Grants. And there's a motion before us, and I don't know if there's any.
For the Canadian Mental Health Association, $2,700 to NARCIF Nanaimo and Area Resource Services for Family Programs, $3,500, and to the Health Authority for $0. So the total only to the two organizations for $6,200.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Move into item C, 2014 Social Development Grant Program. Purpose to outline the Social Planning Advisory Committee's recommendation on an allocation from the 2014 Social Development Grants.
I'd move that Council allocate a social development grant for 2014 as follows. The applicant, Nanaimo Women's Resource Society, the funding request was $16,500. The program was to move to a new premises, and the funding recommended is $16,500.
And you move that? And Councillor Patchy seconded. I see Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Worship. Just a question to staff, if I may, please. Of the $60,000 that comes forward from the gaming to fund such initiatives as this, what will our balance be I'm making the assumption that this will be the last intake?
Mr. Tucker, are you going to be doing that?
No, this would be the initial intake for the 60,000, so it'd be a balance. I'm not good with figures of
46,000 plus or minus.
Yeah, rough 43.5.
So this is for 2014, obviously.
Yes.
And if I might just then ask if the Women's Resource Society has received similar amounts previously, or is this in addition to? I'm supportive of it. I just want to try to discern where the monies would typically come from, and if we're of the $60,000 on an annual basis that we'd receive from the gaming, if in fact we're diminishing from somewhere else in the same vein.
The allocation is decided by the Social Planning Advisory Committee, and last year you may recall that the entire amount went towards the purchase of a refrigerated truck for the loaves and fishes.
Okay.
And
Right.
so the SPAC advises each year based on need in the community.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, I see no further questions from council. Motion has been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving into developments variance permit DVP 214 3105 Uplands Drive. Purpose to obtain council authorization to vary the lot depth and rear yard setback provisions of bylaw 4500 in order to permit a two-lot subdivision. And at this point, it's requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to that particular site at DVP 214. Is there anyone in attendance that come down, ma'am? We just need your name and address for the file, and whether you're for or against that particular development.
Thank you, Your Honor. My name is Leslie Bly. I live at 4032 Departure Bay Road. This property that we're talking about subdividing is quite a nuisance property. It's on the corner of Uplands and Departure Bay. The high school is right up the street. There's a lot of rental in the area, and we've had to call the police several times for large parties because that is a rental suite or house. And I'm just not in favor of putting another rental suite next to a rental suite. I mean, if the people are going to live there that own the property, that'd be fine because then they can see what's happening. But I'm just not in favor of having another rental suite in this Departure Bay area, which Departure Bay has a lovely, lovely ambiance to it. I've lived there for over 20 years. I'd like to have peace and quiet, and we enjoy living there, and we want to keep a level of maintenance that is enjoyable for everybody to live there. There are a lot of rental properties, and we just prefer that not to happen right then, and I am not in favor of this.
Okay, thank you. Bill, do you have a question for this?
I think it was the last go around, but I could.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I appreciate your comments very much. And maybe just before you go, does staff, are we aware of any of the concerns that's been suggested by the delegation? Has this been a nuisance property, not in the legal sense, but in the inconvenience to residents sense? Mr. Swaby?
Worship, I don't have that information with me. I'm sure there's been calls, as the delegation has mentioned. I just don't have that.
Okay, I appreciate that. Okay, thank you, ma'am. Appreciate your
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Richard. Just a question to staff. So clearly the existing house remains, and a second dwelling would be placed on that lot. And do we have any notices through bylaw as a result of complaints on the property in question?
Your Worship, again, I don't have that information in front of me. I'm not aware of any.
Okay, thank you. Now, in the event that we did, anything on file, would that influence bringing this forward at this time?
From staff's point of view, it wouldn't impact the decision about the land use. That would potentially be a political issue that you might want to consider.
So clearly this is simply a land use issue or decision, despite that there might be other concerns registered? So if it is a political issue, how would I know if it's a political issue if I don't know if there's anything registered on complaints on file?
Your Worship, that's part of your, I guess, your role as council is to listen to people and then judge whether you believe there's enough influence to cause you not to support the land use. Staff's opinion, the tenureship and the way in which the tenureship is a problem or not a problem is not really germane to the application. That's an enforcement issue and an issue that needs to be dealt with differently.
Thank you.
Well, you know, if I can, to staff as well, I find it a little troublesome because this is the first I've known or heard of any problems with that particular site. And I guess the question that I have is if this was deferred until the next meeting and staff got the information for us, would that seriously affect the plans of the individual?
Your Worship, it's totally up to Council's pleasure. I'm not sure that what that would provide Council if there's an issue on the property in terms of a bylaw enforcement issue. It's going to be there whether the house is there now or whether the development occurs later, and we would act according to the complaint and try and deal with the issue.
But the owner of record is the same owner, is it not?
Yes.
So that if there's been problems with the first one would assume logically there could be problems with two on there, and if the same owner will own both properties. And I'm just sort of concerned about that particular aspect.
Your Worship, I'm up to Council's pleasure on how you'd like to deal with this.
Okay, we got some more questions. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question through you to staff is, with this development variance permit, we don't know whether or not it's going to be a rental property or just a regular home that someone's going to live in. Is that correct?
That's correct. We don't regulate tenureship.
Mm-hmm. And the other question that I was going to ask is, currently in the report it says that if we were to approve the variances, it would bring the existing dwelling on proposed lot 2 into conformity with the bylaw. That's correct? So I'm just curious as to why it's not conforming with the bylaw currently.
Mr. Tucker?
Due to the location of the existing house, the subdivision is taking place to split the lot and to retain the existing house and meet the minimum requirements in terms of lot area. The lot line has to be closer to the existing house than would be allowed, and that's why the variance in setback that is required. The new lot being created is on the narrow portion of the lot, and therefore the lot depth for that lot being created has to be varied. So that's why the two variances.
Okay. And through you, Mr. Chair, I just would like to make a comment that I understand that the delegation had a concern about parties that have occurred in that home, but what council is looking at is the variances that are there with this property, and we can't control whether or not the individual is going to rent the property or so on. So I am in favor of the development variance permit, and I think we should approve it just based on the fact that we can't control whether or not someone is going to move into the house later on and decide to rent it out.
Okay, Councillor Brennan.
Have anything to add to what Councillor Anderson said? I think he's
Okay.
quite correct.
Councillor Pachi.
Thank you, Worship. To staff, I did not get the address of the delegation. What was the number on Departure Bay Road? 4032. Okay. All right. I just want to make a comment as well. I drive past that property 4 times a week, 5 times a week, and there's a nice gentleman I only know him by his first name, it's Ken. He owns 3125 Uplands Drive. And we have waved to each other for 5 years every time I pass by because he's in his yard most of the time. And so I stopped when I knew this was coming. That owner at 3125 has absolutely no issue with this. I made very sure that he was aware of what was happening. And I also happen to know that the person who lived at 4020, the house is empty now, I believe, was an elderly gentleman, and I wonder what kind of parties he had. In any case, I'm fully supportive
Thank you very much,
of
Councillor
the
Paget.
variance.
Okay, Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Worship. Just quickly, as most on council know, I'm very supportive of RS1 to RS2, particularly in the case where we have density bonusing, so to speak, if you will, and I do appreciate this. I do appreciate people coming and bringing their concerns to us as well. Is it reasonable to assume that both of these units could have rental units inside them, as I believe that the potential exists for that to happen?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. So I think it's something that we need to keep in mind, and I think that's something that we need to consider when we're doing these DVPs. But in this case, based on the information as provided by Councillor Pachi and the intent and purpose and the information from Councillor Anderson or his comments, I'll be supporting this development variance permit.
Are you pushing your button, or are you just?
Yes, I'll move them, Your Worship. I'd like
And we have one more question after
Oh,
that.
sorry.
Okay.
I'd like to move the staff's recommendation that council issue development variance permit number DVP 214 at 3105 Uplands Drive.
Councillor Brennan seconds. Do you want to speak to it?
Yeah, I would. It's important for us to remember that we are being asked to consider land use, not who uses the land. I know that there's a sense that when you're renting, that you don't have the same kind of commitment to the property, and that you might play fast and loose with noise bylaws, etc. But I know just as strongly that people who own properties have parties and can, I mean, we've had lots of examples in the city where we've had owners of properties be a real problem for us. So you can't really generalize based on whether a person is an owner or a renter. I mean, there's standards of behavior, and really, when it boils right down to it, when it's a rental situation, it is the owner of the property who is responsible for dealing with the tenants. And if the tenants are disturbing neighbors, it's the owner's responsibility. So owners aren't always the most responsible people either. So I always get a little kind of itchy when I'm confronted with the sentiment that we shouldn't make changes to land use because we might have renters living there. I was a renter for a long time. I was a single parent with 2 children, and I was living on income assistance. And I'm sure that had you described that to lots of landlords or neighbors, they would have thought this would be a poor bet for a tenant. But I paid my rent on time. My kids were reasonably well behaved, and I think I was a good tenant. And I think that tenants can be just as good neighbors as anyone else, and I always get a little itchy around this. I just wanted to make that my rant for the evening.
Okay. Councillor Kipp. Oh, you're off? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving into development variance permit DVP 219, 200-2980 Island Highway North, Tim Hortons Rock City Plaza signage. And the purpose is to obtain council authorization to vary the provisions of bylaw number 2850 in order to permit a rooftop sign. And at this point, it's requested that anyone, that council rather, hear anyone wishing to speak to matters related to this DVP. Is there anyone in attendance that'd like to speak to matters related to the Tim Hortons signage or DVP 219? We just need your name and address and whether you're for or against it, sir.
Project, and I live at, my office is at 3707 First Avenue in Burnaby, and I just thought I should be here to answer some questions if any of the council members had them, and maybe give a little bit of an explanation of where we're at.
Do you have one?
The restaurant was renovated very recently. We finished the renovation, and part of the renovation included part of the new look that Tim Hortons has, and it's a big rock feature wall with windows, and above the windows, they have a metal band. Above that, they've got awnings, and then gooseneck lights, and then the signage. And this was an existing building, so by the time you get all that, you get a bit of a raised parapet. So the roof is not really, or the sign is not really a roof sign, they call it a roof sign. It's on the higher part of the parapet. It ends up to be about 3'8" above the roof. And somehow the building is built before the sign approval was given. So, and then it was, I guess, we didn't realize it was a variance until it was all constructed. So project's on hold now, just waiting for we haven't installed the awnings or the metal band, or I think the gooseneck lights yet, but that's it.
I think the building was rebuilt rather than built. It was already in place.
Yeah, the renovation was done.
Renovations, yeah. Okay, I don't see any questions from staff. I think we've had a discussion previously on this very same subject. So I think Councillor Beswick was going to move this, and is there a second?
Sorry?
I don't know that's necessary, but... Well, not in this particular instance, but... okay, and so is there a seconder for the motion from...
I haven't made the motion, Your Worship, but I so move that
you were going to move
Council issue development variance permit 219 at 200, 2980 Island Highway North.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you, sir. Moving into the development variance permit DVP 221 at 5101 Rutherford Road, land exchange, Insight/School District number 68.
Cell phone and apprehension of bias.
Thank you. The purpose is to obtain council authorization to vary the lot depth provisions of bylaw number 4500 for a number of lots within the proposed subdivision. And at this point, I'm going to ask if there's anyone in attendance tonight that would like to speak to matters related to DVP 221.
Your Worship, seeing none, I will so move that Council issue development variance permit 221 at 5101 Rutherford Road.
Moved and seconded. Discussion, Councillor Kipp.
Thank you, Worship. This is one of those ones that I sometimes hold my bias against, with a complete subdivision made of small lots. It's interesting, the one we talked about just earlier, where it was in an area recreating different form of housing within that area. That's what I always thought our small lot subdivisions would do. Although this one has been planned for quite a while, it is within a service area just up around the corner. There's shopping and some facilities. So this is the type of thing. I wished we had a different mix of housing within this specific subdivision. I'm not fussy about cul-de-sacs for emergency management and things like that, but I really do like the mix of housings in area versus one, but I support this one in its context.
Okay. Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Your Worship. I support it as well. I'm just, you know, quite often we have these large houses being built and sold for $600,000, and I'm looking at this as affordable housing. I don't know how affordable or what the prices would be, but that's mainly why I support this. I'm sure it won't be a $600,000 house, I wouldn't imagine, especially on the small lot, so that's all.
Okay, Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. I had the privilege of walking around this area, and it's very picturesque. I think it's going to be an ideal community close to Oliver Woods, and I particularly appreciate that the lot depths have been reduced in order to honor the aquatic setback of 15 meters, so I certainly support it.
Okay, I see no further questions. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries, and Councillor Brennan can return at her discretion. We'll move into the development variance permit DVP 222 at 6010 and 6016 Tweedsmuir Crescent. Purpose is to obtain council authorization to vary the lot depth provisions of bylaw 4500 in order to permit a 4-lot subdivision. And it's requested at this time that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to DVP 222. Is there anyone in attendance tonight that would like to speak to matters related to DVP 222?
Your Worship, seeing none, I so move that Council issue development variance permit 222 at 6010 and 6016 Tweedsmuir Crescent.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving into rezoning application RA 321, access issues related to 5709 Ocean View Terrace and 5620 Hammond Bay Road. The purpose is to clarify access issues as required by council at the regular council meeting held 2013 September 23, and there's a motion on that. Just allow me to turn on your microphone here. Ready?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move that council direct staff to return the application and the associated zoning amendment bylaw 2013 number 4500.047 to public hearing, and 2, secure the proposed road improvements as a condition of rezoning.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Second. Moved and seconded. Discussion, Councillor Kipp.
They're going to cut the grass on that? No, none, man.
Yes, it was actually. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We're moving into rezoning application, RA 322 at 2155/2157/2161 Boxwood Road, which is the Co-op Cardlock. The purpose to present an application to rezone the property from single-dwelling residential R1 to highway industrial in I1, to add a fueling installation as permitted use within the I1 zone in order to permit a commercial cardlock gas station. So, would someone like to move? Yes, if you'd like to move it. And second, Councillor Brennan. And do you want to speak to Councillor? Go ahead, Councillor Kipp.
I read the recommendation of Councillor staff to secure the community contribution prior to the adoption of zoning amendment bylaw number 2013 number 4500.051. Should council support the bylaw tonight? And the bylaw itself is the zoning amendment bylaw 2013 number 4500.051. RA 322 to rezone property at 2155, 2157, 2161 Boxwood from single dwelling residential R1 to highway industrial I1 in order to permit a commercial cardlock gas station past first reading.
Okay, and you've moved that, and I think Councillor Brennan seconded that. Are we getting a look here?
Yeah, Your Worship, I would suggest that we council deals with the first recommendation on the report. Which
Okay,
is
the
motion-
recommendation.
Yes, and then we can move into the bylaw.
Before the bylaw, we're going to go to the first one. So do you want to, I don't think we need to remove, well, unless you
I
want to.
read that one, the staff recommendation, we'll do them seriatim.
Okay, so you're going to move that then. And Councillor Brennan, you were seconding it, were you? Or whoever?
Doesn't matter.
Councillor. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
I asked to speak.
Oh, I'm
on
sorry,
that.
Councillor Patchy, I see you there too. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to say, Your Worship, that this has been a very difficult proposition, not only for myself, but certainly for the membership of the Advisory Planning Committee, which I chair, and which in fact turned down this request some time ago. Then the co-op folks came back with Ms. Pilcher, and she made a very good explanation the second time around, but I still felt myself between a rock and a hard place as far as the traffic is concerned that comes off the Parkway and comes up Northfield. There still, to my mind, are some access and egress difficulties, particularly when I look at the Boxwood intersection that at some point will be a busier one than it is now, in that we are going to pull Boxwood through to Bowen Road, where Bowen House is. So Councillor Kipp and myself met with the proponents only the beginning of this week, and we walked the land, and I need to tell you that I felt a little bit better, but it was actually Councillor Kipp on the walk back to my car who gave me the deciding push. So while I still have some concerns, I'll be voting for this. Hopefully nobody will come forth with the same problems that I, to some extent, still have. And if they don't, I shall forever hold my peace and vote this. So I'll be supporting it at this point.
Okay, now we've got a raft. I just want to clarify, Councillor Kipp, you have nothing to add? No, and Councillor Brennan?
Yeah, thank you,
Go ahead.
Your Worship. I support this. First of all, the co-op is a really it's a really good corporate citizen. It's a very responsible corporate citizen, and so I tend to look favorably on applications that they bring forward because I have a lot of confidence in them. But in this particular instance, I think that what they are proposing is really congruent with our official community plan. It's very congruent with the industrial lands there, the industrial uses. The service that the co-op is going to be providing is congruent with the services already in the industrial park there. On top of that, the Mid-Island Co-op has a gas station at the old co-op location.
Labio Road intersection.
Yeah, Labio and Bowen. And they have the facilities there that are servicing the business that will be coming to this Cardlock one. So in fact, there should be a diversion of traffic from Labio and Bowen to Boxwood, which I think, again, is congruent with what we want to see. So it makes sense to me. I think sometimes with petroleum companies, you know, the sense is we don't have a lot of control over them and how they behave in our communities. But the Mid-Island Co-op is quite different because they have 50,000 members, and that's small business and individuals. And so the owners of those gas stations live here. They don't pay out to shareholders in New York or Los Angeles. They pay out to shareholders here in Nanaimo, and we have that control. Our community has that control. So I feel quite comfortable in supporting this for a variety of reasons, but probably most importantly because the proposal is congruent and consistent with where we're going in our land use planning, especially for industrial.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report stated that there will be maintenance of the existing trees and further landscaping. But for me, the biggest concern is that, and I guess I'd like an answer, is the traffic impact assessment said it will generate far fewer trips to the fueling station than conventional gas stations. What equates to far fewer trips? How many would that be? Do we have any idea?
Your Worship, I don't have a precise number to respond to that question. I can certainly look that up. I would respond in a more general way that in terms of commercial card locks are for commercial vehicles only, and just the number of commercial vehicles on the road are fewer than those for private automobiles, and so proportionally there would be fewer trips. And the location here will relieve commercial vehicles from going all the way into Bowen Road and then up to the Labio location, and in fact allow them to get back onto the parkway more quickly, so it will relieve some of the congestion at the Bowen and Northfield intersection. But the actual number, I will get that to you when I review the reports tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker.
Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Your Worship. Recently, we received some correspondence from the trucking industry and members of the trucking industry about how Nanaimo is becoming extremely difficult to try and do business if you're a trucker. There's no places to stop. There's no places to go to the bathroom. There's no places to park your truck and go to the bathroom, or park your truck and go grab a cup of coffee. And it's become very difficult for them, both north and south end. And I'm wondering on this one here, and I apologize for not having made the on-site meeting, but how does both a northbound and southbound truck that may or may not be coming from Departure Bay or going to Departure Bay, how do they access this facility and exit this facility? Or how do they park their truck there, fuel, we understand that there may be Tim Hortons going across the street. How does a person, take a 5-minute break if you're a trucker utilizing this facility?
Your Worship, well, the first question is answered on page 65, provides the schematic of how you access the site, both off of Boxwood and Northfield. The second part of the question, I've heard the same complaints from the taxi industry as well. We generally leave it up to the private sector industry to resolve the issues around washrooms. That would be certainly something that would be a different level of service if we were to get involved in that. But that we generally leave to, in this case, the co-op to resolve for their patrons that use the facility.
Supplemental then. I missed somewhere in here about access northbound on Northfield Road. Can you make a left-hand turn into it?
Your Worship, it appears to me, and Mr. Tucker can clarify, that you would turn onto Boxwood and then into the property. If you're northbound that's traveling on Northfield towards the Parkway. You would have to turn into Boxwood and then into the property.
So then a person would have to do, in order to continue northbound, he'd have to do a complete 360-degree on the lot.
Correct.
Okay. I don't know if that covers that.
Okay, I just might mention that I know of at least one and maybe more, but certainly I'm aware of one instance of a key lock that has washroom facilities. So I would assume if this particular one goes ahead, and given that the assumed size it'll be, if there's demand from the truckers, they probably would be prepared to provide a comfort station for them. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff, I'm just curious what amenities are being provided to the city other than just the $20,000 community contribution.
Your Worship, unless Mr. Tucker can clarify, that's the amenity that's proposed.
So, sorry, is there sidewalks being built and so on and all of those type of things?
That's correct. All the bylaws will be adhered to in terms of works and services.
And the other question that I have is in regards to the community contribution package of $20,000, an estimated value of $20,000. It says that it's going to improve the local park at 2235 Fern Road, and I was just wondering how that came to be to make that decision for it to just go there instead of into just a general pot for future park acquisition.
Your Worship, I'll start off. Generally, these applications are reviewed by staff in different departments, and as part of that review, we would have discussed with the Parks and Rec Department the opportunity to improve the local park, and I believe that's how this came about.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is just because recently, over the last few months, we've seen consistently developers saying we want to put money into certain areas, and I was wondering if this was one of the cases that it was driven by the developer or if it was driven by our own staff.
It was driven by staff in this case.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, I'm on the advisory planning committee as well, and the proponent came and made a presentation, and we turned it down the first time. We weren't too happy with some of the things. My main problem was with the first thing that people would come in off the Parkway would be a card lock, a key lock, a bunch of fencing, and it wasn't very attractive. So then, since then, they've added a lot of landscaping, which is appealing and which satisfies me. I also think that taking a look at that property, I can't imagine putting houses on that particular spot. So then you start thinking about what you would put on there. This seems to fit the location. The size, maybe Councillor McKay, I could answer some of your questions there. The size is appropriate to turn around. It does show the tanks, but they're not above ground, they're below ground, so there's a lot of room in that area. So there is a lot of room to turn around. I'll be supporting this. Again, I can't see, you could put a gas station on that spot, I guess, but I can't see putting houses on that. So I'll support this.
Councillor, Are you on again, Councillor? Ted, you want to add something to it? Sorry.
Clarifying that when I said that sidewalks would apply, I've just noted and been advised that this is an industrial use, and industrial uses don't trigger the sidewalks, so this would not provide sidewalks. It would be to an industrial standard.
So it would just include street trees next to an industrial area. Is that correct?
I don't know, Mr. Tucker. In this case, they're showing a landscape plan, which is on page 66, which does indicate some vegetation along the edge of the road.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I see no further questions on this. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Now we're going to actually go into the zoning itself. Yeah.
So we're going to go to the bylaw, Your Worship.
The bylaw itself now, and that's the one.
2013 number 4500-051, RA 322, to rezone property at 2155, 2157, 2161 Boxwood from single-family residential R1 to highway industrial I1 in order to permit a commercial card lock gas station. Passed first reading.
No, it's first reading. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Zoning amendment bylaw 2013 or 4500.051 passed second reading.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Move into item J, secondary suites in duplexes, to be introduced by Mr. Dale Lindsay, Acting Director of Development. Mr. Lindsay, are you?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a brief introduction to the report this evening, maybe starting with a little bit of background. As Council's certainly aware, secondary suites in this community were first legalized in 2005. There has been some changes since that time. 2005 looked at legalization of secondary suites in all single-family homes throughout the community. Following years, there were some changes that allowed for those units to be constructed in detached suites, and then most recently in 2010, that was expanded to allow that ability to have these units in detached buildings on a larger number of properties. So it's sort of been an evolving process. Since 2005, there's about 1,600 units now, 1,600 single-family suites that have gone through the process that was established by Council in 2005. Now that includes units that have both been what we call legalized under the existing process, and units that have been authorized. So those are units that would have existed prior to 2005. Although the suites have been allowed in single-family homes, they have not been allowed in duplexes. And it certainly has created some challenges for Council. As they're not allowed in duplexes, when we find a duplex that has a suite and we bring it forward, we basically treat it as a fourplex, and we apply the policies and rules and bylaws of a fourplex, starting with rezoning that property to a fourplex zone, but then triggering items such as development cost charges, works and services, sprinklering of those units. It's those three specifically, and there's a summary on page 71 of your report which sort of identifies those triggers, but it's those three that tend to be the most costly and generally result in the applicant either determining it's not economically feasible to proceed with the legalization of those units, or simply not proceeding at all, and as a result we end up with files which require enforcement. And it was one of those files that we were here in front of Council earlier this year seeking some direction on enforcement, and at that time Council directed the issue be referred to the Development Process Review Committee for their review and consideration. So this report this evening is a summary of the review and the recommendations from DPRC. The recommendations themselves are laid out in the report, but I would sort of hit on the highlights. And the specific or the principal recommendation is that duplexes with suites are different than a fourplex. It's a different type of housing. It's different than a straight duplex that may have stratified units, but it's different than an outright fourplex, and it should be treated as such. So coming out of that, the recommendation is to create a specific zone which allows for duplexes with suites, and requiring, instead of requiring people with these units to rezone to a fourplex zone, to apply for this zone that allows for secondary suites. And as they're suites, they no longer trigger the issues of development cost charges and works and services. At the same time, the recommendation is sort of to bring it under this framework we have that was established in 2005 that looks at both existing units, and their focus would be on authorizing those units, that is making sure that they address the life safety issues, that they're safe for people to live in, and then as a go-forward basis, looking at legalizing any new units, and that would make they'd have to comply completely with the building code and the city's bylaw. So, Your Worship, that's a summary of the report. Staff certainly concur with the recommendations that came out of DPRC and support the recommendations outlined in the report this evening.
Okay, we have a couple of questions. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. To Mr. Lindsay, if I may, could you explain the rationale where our own building bylaw requires fire sprinklers in units, buildings with more than 2 units in it, and you are not recommending that we do that here?
Thank you for raising that. So the important thing to note is that this recommendation, I think, originated out of this idea that there was a number of units out there in these buildings that were illegal, and trying to find a framework for allowing those to move forward. So the recommendation with the existing units is to authorize those units and to deal with life safety. So you're correct that if we dealt with life safety, we're principally dealing with exiting, fire separation, and detection, but not triggering sprinklers. Where we would be recommending sprinklers is on a go-forward basis on any units that are legalized, that sprinklers would be applied. Again, it gets back to that cost analysis. Certainly retrofitting an existing building and sprinklering the entire building can be quite costly, where if you're starting on a brand new building, it can be worked into the design and certainly doesn't have the same financial implications.
Follow up, Your Worship. When we dealt with secondary suites in single-family dwellings, we estimated, if I remember correctly, that there were about 2,000 that we estimated. Do we have a handle on how many duplexes that might be with what are now illegal suites at this point?
Yeah. Certainly, Your Worship. Certainly, it's significantly different in terms of scale. In 2005, there would have been approximately 20,000 homes in the city, and I think the estimates at the time were 2,000 to 3,000 of those homes would have contained illegal suites. Today, there's about 500 lots in the city that are zoned for duplex, and at this point, we would just estimate that maybe 100 to 150 of those actually contain some form of illegal suites.
Thank you.
Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. In the past, we've had delegations appear that were concerned that perhaps there might be illegal suites placed in duplexes, and their major concern was parking. And in the report, you've indicated that parking stalls would be R4 in legal duplexes and 6 in legal fourplexes. Do you deem that to be enough?
Certainly what we're looking at is applying the existing ratios under our parking bylaws. So a suite in a home, for example, a single-family home requires 2 parking stalls plus 1 additional stall for that suite. Using that same ratio for a duplex, it would be two parking stalls for that principal unit and then 1 additional for the suite. So we certainly think it's in keeping with the framework that's out there, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I was coming up next. I actually have a question as well, and that is something that I brought up at DPRC that I was very concerned about. You, in your graph there, it shows that going from duplex to duplex with suites could trigger a rezoning, and I'm really concerned about that process because you're basically going from R4 to R4. Am I wrong in that?
Well, thank you. Part of the recommendation is to create a separate zone, again, recognizing that these are different and recognizing that someone may want to come forward and simply apply for a duplex that doesn't have suites, and that it could be a unique housing form on its own, stratify those units, sell them separately. We might have another proposal that comes forward that wants to have suites contained and market their project as containing suites. So again, they would apply for a separate zoning category. So the idea is to create a zone that recognizes this specific use that has duplexes with suites in them, and giving council the opportunity to vet those applications.
I'm really concerned that that when, you know, that going through that process is going to cause a lot of discomfort for an owner who may have had this subdivision for maybe 20 years. We saw one here 6 months ago that was just like that, and we're going to end up in a zoning situation that the neighborhood may object to, notwithstanding the fact that it's been that use for all those years.
Your Worship, this is somewhat of the it's both the carrot and the stick approach in terms of getting people to comply with bylaws, but it's also the political reality of so the neighborhoods may not actually agree with the enshrining the use, and that we think is council's decision, not staff's, in terms of evaluating.
Okay. Great. Thank you. But at the time, we can always vote either way at our choosing. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
No, it's been moved and seconded? Oh. Oh, I'm sorry, there are more questions on it. So you've spoken already? You have spoken? No, but Johnson is on next, so. And so now it's you. Go ahead. Councillor Best.
I haven't.
Yes,
Oh, yeah,
She said she had, so.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, I think our city manager identified that this is solving a current issue, concern, problem that we've had and that we've been toiling with for several years. And the new zoning category, I think, will address, the moving forward situations that ideally will put us in a better situation moving forward, triggering all of the requirements and parking, et cetera. So I think this is something that has been, we've been delinquent in dealing with all of our illegal suites and legal secondary suites and so on and so forth. And this should advance us to a situation where we can take a little bit more control of it without being really, really heavy-handed. And the new zoning category, I think, will be good for us. And I also think that the sprinkler, scenario program moving forward with new builds will assist us all in the future. So I'm really happy about this, and I look forward to our colleagues approving it.
Good points. Okay, Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, I as well. This is a tough one because of the renovating into a secondary suite can be a very expensive proposition. And residential sprinklers aren't code yet. Whether there will be or not is another story. In my previous job, I ran into a few of these illegal suites, and they were very difficult to handle and were troublesome because they didn't have the proper fire-rated doors and gyprock and so on and so forth, so they were a real fire hazard. I have a couple questions. One is are the smoke detectors, would they have to be hardwired up to the present code?
That's correct, Your Worship. They would need, not only would they need to be hardwired, but under the new building code adopted just last fall, there's some additional changes which now require detectors actually in each bedroom. So the standard's definitely been increased in the last year.
Oh. And one more question, Your Worship. We always ran into problems as well with the electrical panel. We had a smoke detector, perhaps was in the main building, but the electrical panel was in the basement in the illegal suite. Is there some kind of a regulation that would control that situation, or is that something that's not necessary, not important, not thought of?
There's no regulation, Your Worship, under the existing code that I'm aware of that would require that.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Kipp.
Yeah, thank you. I believe these have a good form of housing built into them. They're affordable. You can talk about affordability or the ability to keep people in their house longer. They're good infill. My question to staff is twofold. Prior to 2005, with our secondary suites, we allowed Section 57 to be registered if they were proven to be before 2005. Is there anything built into that? I didn't read the report to see that. So would there be a difference in an older suite with a Section 57 and a different upgrade, or would they be a consistent upgrade across the age?
Thank you, Richard. That's a good point. I should have mentioned. So under the policy and the framework that established in 2005, as part of authorizing those units and addressing the life safety upgrades, we also bring each of those applications forward to Council with a recommendation to register a notice, what we call a notice on the title, as Councillor Kipp's referring to. The same would continue under this program. So for those existing units that we are aware of or that we become aware of that were built prior, we would bring them forward through authorization, address those life safety issues, and also be recommending a notice registered on the title.
Okay, and a follow-up if I can. Smoke alarms, interconnected?
Yes.
So that between all the units, if a smoke alarm goes off on unit number 1, it rings throughout 2, 3, 4.
That is correct, yes.
And even across the fire separation of a duplex? It does too. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Brandon.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is for Mr. Lindsay again. So when we identify an illegal suite in a if this passes, and we identify an illegal suite in a duplex, and staff proposes that a Section 57 be registered against title, would we also insist that the owner go through a rezoning application?
Yes, generally yes, unless the property had possibly had an existing multifamily zone on it that would allow for 4 units.
Yeah.
But in the normal case, yes, it would require a rezoning, yes.
So that's different. That's how it differentiates from the single-family house that that has an illegal suite. We would put a Section 57, ensure that it's up to safety standards, and then everyone goes on their merry way. But in this instance, the possibility exists that they would go to rezoning and it would be turned down. So we would lose that rental suite. So that to me is a disappointment in this report, because we specifically chose in 2005 not to do that, to have suites, secondary suites permitted across every zone in the city, and there wasn't, and we did that specifically to avoid the situation where the neighborhood gets to determine. And again, I mean, it frequently is just based on the apprehension that renters are bad things in neighborhoods. So to me, that's a disappointment, but I see it as a step. It's a baby step along the way to complete legalization. And so I look forward to that happening in the future. But in the meantime, I can be satisfied with this.
Okay, I see no further questions. I'll be supporting this, and I think it's a step in the right direction. I think now duplexes will be brought in line with some of the other existing policies that we have, and people have the option now of applying and bringing forward their legal duplex en-suite or secondary suite and bring it into compliance. Now, if I can, just to staff here, the motion is 1, A, B, C, 2, and 3. Any part at seriatim, or can we do them all as a block?
Again, Your Worship, it's at council discretion.
Okay.
For those people watching at home, sometimes it's beneficial to read the motions.
I would move that Council 1 adopt.
Well, I thought Councillor Paggi was going to make the motion. But did you not want to make a motion now on this one? We're doing... Oh, well, in that case... Councillor Anderson, go for it. Sorry.
I would move that Council adopt the following policy with respect to secondary suites and duplexes. A, require existing and proposed duplexes that contain suites to comply with zoning or apply for zoning. B, require existing suites built prior to 2013, January 1st, to be authorized, including addressing life safety issues and the registration of a notice on title. C, requires suites and duplexes built on or after January 1st, 2013 to be legalized, including full compliance with the building code and the building bylaw and the parking bylaw. And 2, direct staff to prepare a new zone that permits secondary suites within a duplex. And 3, direct staff to prepare for Council's consideration amendments to the City of Nanaimo Building Bylaw 2003, number 5993, as outlined in the staff report.
Okay, is there a seconder for that?
As chair of the Development Process Review Committee, I'll gladly second that.
Okay. Actually, I think Councillor Patchy was going to move this until he saw how much writing was involved. So thank you, Councillor Anderson, for that. That may not have been the case, I'm sure of that. In any event, I don't see any further questions on it. You don't have another one, do you? No? So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Planning and application fees, item K, purpose to obtain council approval to amend planning application fees. And the staff recommendation is there. So I'd like to move the
Your Worship,
recommendation.
I so move that council receive the report pertaining to Development Services Department fees and charges amendment bylaw 7016.04.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in... Okay, I'll just take this one off. Now you're on.
Now, I have a question to staff. I would like a little bit more information as to how you came to these new amounts. For instance, development variance permit, you bring it up to $750 for commercial, $500 for single family, whereas the average in comparable municipalities is $833, and that's still quite a lot. That's still quite a difference. Similarly, liquor license applications, basically the same story. We're still below the average. Why would that be?
Yes, Your Worship. This was based on a review of comparable municipalities, and in the staff report, those comparisons are all shown on the tables in the attachment. And when we took it to the Development Process Review Committee, we presented the changes as proposed. The Development Process Review Committee asked us to do further work and to look at the proposed changes. The feeling was this brought us more into line with what comparable communities and the average was, and but there wasn't a feeling that we should unduly raise the fees further than what was being proposed. So this was based on staff discussion with the DPRC and their recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bestwick, did you?
Thank you, Worship. I would just like to follow up on Mr. Tucker. That trending in the right direction for sure, and the undertaking involves members of our community, of our building community, and of our business community, and so on. I'm sure, as you well know. And listening to their feedback and the information that they provided us as it relates to the fees that we were charging to the fees that we are now wishing to apply or intending to apply and bring forward to council made sense. And I can certainly suggest that in the future, I'm certain that we'll be revisiting this again and see what the feedback is from the community and then proceed accordingly. But this is a step in the right direction. We're trending in the right way.
Good. Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to staff, based on these increases, do you have any idea of what kind of revenue may be generated in an average year of development permit fees?
There'll be a modest increase. Some of these fee increases are carrying the costs over directly to the applicant, and in particular, the advertising requirements, for example, for a rezoning application. We were in a position where we were in effect subsidizing those advertising costs because we weren't charging enough through our application fees. It will now become a direct cost to the applicant to cover those advertising costs. So that won't necessarily reflect as revenue to the city. It will be a flow-through cost of we will put the ads in the papers and then recoup that from the applicant.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, now it's been moved and seconded, and we haven't gone into the bylaws. This is prior to that. So all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And now we go into the bylaws, and the motions are before you. If somebody would like to move those.
Go ahead.
Councillor Kidd? Whoever, or Councillor Bestwick?
That Development Services Department fees and charges amendment bylaw 2013-16.04 to change development fees associated with planning and design section past first reading.
Moved and seconded. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion
That
carries.
Development Service Department fees and charges amendment bylaw 2013-7016.04 pass second reading.
Seconded. All those in favor? Opposed?
And that Development Service Department fees and charges amendment bylaw 2013-7016.04 pass third reading.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Move into item L, Official Community Plan, Plan Nanaimo, 5-year review. The purpose is to obtain council support for initiating the Official Community Plan 5-year review process, as well as the terms of reference. And the staff motion is before you. I'll just get your microphone, just 1 second.
Staff to initiate the official community plan 5-year review process, and 2, approve the official community plan 5-year review terms of reference.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Discussion? Councillor Besser, you're on for this one?
No.
Okay, Councillor Patchy?
Thank you, Worship. This is a very important issue that will involve the Advisory Planning Committee to a large extent, but it also affects the public in a large degree. So I wonder if staff, presumably Mr. Tucker, might just be willing to talk a little bit about the phases that this will go through. We'll start this month or December and we'll go through till June of next year, but I think it's important that you explain that.
Thank you, Councillor Patchy. The process is to have 4 phases, which, as Councillor Patchy said, are intended to take place between now and next June. So it's going to be focusing on certain aspects of the official community plan. It's not like the review we did in 2008, 2006 to 2008, which was a complete sort of overhaul of the plan. The first phase is the background analysis phase. That's taking place over the next couple of months through December and January of next year. We'll also, in that phase of the process, include a public open house to identify some issues that we may not have caught in drawing up the terms of reference that's in front of council. There may be some that the public feels strongly about that we've overlooked, and that would be the purpose of that review and analysis phase. We then go into a consultation and resolution process. A lot of this has to do with our relationship with external agencies and how the OCP is working as a working document. So involvement with people like the Ministry of Environment, or what it's now called, I know it by its acronym, and Councillor Kipp, I know you don't like acronyms, so I'll stick with Ministry of Environment. So this phase is going to be looking at those reviews. Again, we would go back to the public during this phase, presenting options. The actual OCP amendment bylaws would likely appear in April and begin the formal adoption process for the changes coming forward. And I should say those bylaws will be a combination of some major policy elements with some housekeeping elements. There's some pieces that are just need to do maintaining the house, if you will. And then finally getting through the bylaw proceedings, hopefully wrapping that up in May and June of next year.
Okay, Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. I really appreciate the fact that we're going over OCP. I'm always concerned with the hierarchy of documents and where they fit in. And like I've said before, our OCP is really like a strategic plan document almost. As a planning document, it's very intense. So what does staff see? How does this fit in now with a strategic plan, our budget, and the OCP? How do they hierarchically line up? Which is the most important document?
From a planning perspective,
the question is
OCP,
to the Director of Planning, so of course the OCP is the most important document.
That was easy.
The OCP is a land use document, but what we're finding very strongly through the Transportation Master Plan process is the linkages between the Transportation Plan and the Land Use Plan. So those two documents are very closely tied together in terms of the physical structure of the community. Then the other plans that are from other line departments are in terms of the service delivery of those line departments in fitting into that overall vision of the official community plan. And then at the top is our long-term view, our strategic view, which is the strategic plan, and which takes into account things like asset management, which are multi-generational. So that's sort of the way I would see those documents fitting together.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just quickly through you to staff. In the stakeholder partner consultation process, you've identified non-government organizations as being one of the stakeholder groups. Would that include VIU?
Yes, it would. There are many agencies within the community, and particularly when we move into, for example, the social pillar, the social equity pillar, where a lot of not-for-profits, we've just recently gone through the social and health network process, and those agencies will inform that part of the review.
Good, thank you.
Okay. So we have the bylaw motion, oops, sorry, the staff recommendation there, and we're doing the motion to direct staff to initiate the official community plan for 5 years and approve. Motion's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Into proposed road closure adjacent to 141 Westwood Road. Purpose to obtain council authorization for the conditional road closure and transfer agreement and to direct staff to proceed with the public notice for the road closure.
So
moved. Second? Moved and seconded?
1, 2, and 3.
And, 1 and 2. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. You got the mover and seconder? Yeah, the motion was to, 1, authorize the proposed road exchange with the developer of 141 Westwood Road, OM Developments Incorporated, and direct the mayor and the corporate officer to execute the conditional road closure and transfer agreement, and 2, direct staff to proceed with the public notice for the road closure and the road dedication of a portion of Westwood Road. And that's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And then we'll move into the bylaw.
I move the bylaws that highway closure and dedication removal a portion of Westwood Road adjacent to 141 Westwood Road, bylaw 2013 number 7178, to provide for highway closure and dedication removal of a portion of Westwood Road adjacent to 141 Westwood Road, pass first reading.
Second, discussion. I see none. All those, you're going to do it in Siri, Adam? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And 2?
And that highway closure and dedication removal portion of Westwood Road adjacent to 141 Westwood Road, bylaw 2013 number 7178, pass second reading.
Okay. Seconder? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And the next item's been struck, so we'll move into item N. Sorry?
Okay, yep. And that highway closure and dedication removal?
No,
is that one?
that's been struck. We're going into item N, proposed road closure, Waddington Road adjacent to 2020 Estevan Road. The purpose to obtain council authorization for the conditional road closure and transfer agreement and to direct staff to proceed with the public notice for road closure. And now there's a motion there, Councillor Anderson. Oh, too late. Okay.
Authorize the proposed road closure of a portion of Waddington Road adjacent to 2020 Estevan Road with the trustees and the congregation of Bethlehem United Church, and direct the mayor and corporate officer to execute the conditional road closure and transfer agreement, and direct staff to receive the public notice for the road closure of a portion of Waddington Road.
Second. Moved and seconded. No discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries.
For the bylaw of the highway closure and dedication removal, a portion of Waddington Road adjacent to 2020 Estevan Road. Bylaw 2013 number 7179 to provide the highway closure and dedication removal of a portion of Waddington Road adjacent to 2020 Estevan Road. Pass first reading.
Second. Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
That highway closure and dedication removal, a portion of Waddington Road adjacent to 2020 Estevan Road, bylaw 2013, number 7179, pass second reading.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed. And the following motion has also been struck.
Third reading we don't require.
No. And so we'll now move into the liquor license application LA 97 at 7024 Stewart Avenue and Carlos O'Brien's. And the purpose to obtain council approval for an application to the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch for a permanent change to an existing licensed establishment for an occupant load from 120 persons to 190 persons. And we do have delegation, Mr. Mark Stone, the owner, Mr. Reg Henry, owner of Carlos O'Brien's Neighborhood Pub, and Mr. Robert Schindlick, I hope I'm close, project architect. Welcome, gentlemen. Sorry it took so long. Sometimes this happens. It's luck of the draw on it, and we appreciate your patience in waiting.
Interesting stuff.
Thank you.
Mark Stones from Stones Marina on Stewart Avenue, the new home of Carlos O'Brien's pub and liquor store.
Well, wait, we have to approve it first now, remember?
Yeah, that's right. And
Reginald Allen Henry.
yeah, he's the owner of the franchise. And I also have Robert Chindelka here in the event that there's any technical questions that I would stumble on.
Thank you.
We're here as a delegation to ask for council support for the planned increase in the number of persons permitted under its liquor license. The new Carlos O'Brien's is in the former Muddy Waters pub building, and we're hoping to open in early January. The new Carlos O'Brien's is the 9th in Kelly O'Brien's Restaurants and Carlos O'Brien's pub franchise. The first operation was opened by Mr. Henry in Kelowna in 1987, and that's the West Kelowna operation there, where you have a Carlos and a Kelly side by side. It's all about fun, birthday celebrations, St. Patrick's Day. We've been working with the city all through 2013 on the renovation of the building, and this is pretty much where we are at this stage in the game. We've opened up everything, a lot more light and a lot more access. We've got a new floor going upstairs, and that's pretty exciting. Before the renovation, the building had all its floor area on one level. To make the most of the building, a large mezzanine floor has been added to provide the additional floor area to accommodate anticipated demand, group functions, special events. A special event like the Bathtub Society event that we have during Marine Festival is in the picture. Based on the renovated interior and the addition of floor space provided on the mezzanine, Carlos asks for a liquor license capacity increase for the pub from 120 to 190 persons. And persons here for us means both patrons plus staff. A total of 190 is comprised of 165 patrons, and that's limited by the Vancouver Island Health Authority, and flexibility for 25 staff. For liquor licensing purposes, the total of 190 persons can be anywhere inside the pub or outside on the pub patio, but altogether, you can't exceed 190 persons. There's an example of the staff at the Kamloops Carlos O'Brien's. The patio limit is calculated separately. The patio allowance is currently 20 persons, and the application asks for an increase to 38, so more persons can enjoy the outdoor amenity. And that's an important thing, is where we are in the location. And let me show you. The patio has an increase in size, but it's very underutilized. Right now, if I've got the two pictures there, and on the top is where the patio is. And on the left-hand picture, you'll see that there's, for 20 persons, I mean, that's 5 tables. And that great expanse of white going all the way to the right and all the way down to the bottom there, that's basically underutilized space. And the picture next to it shows 38 persons and much better utilization of the patio space.
So, Mr. Stone, just for clarity, the water, the ocean, if you wish, is at the top of the picture.
That's correct. Thank you. Carlos understands that the allowance for higher occupancy requires continuing commitment to responsible management. And in order to demonstrate to Nanaimo its desire to be a corporate citizen, they've agreed with us on a noise and traffic management plan for the pub. I mean, it's Carlos O'Brien's greatest desire that the Brecken community and local boaters embrace its business to make it a true neighborhood pub. So what will the management plan include? It'll include some important initiatives. For our site, considerations to both present and future land uses have been taken into account. Now, the zoning permits multifamily residential and hotel use. It's a mixed-use site. The development planning may consider new homes and hotel rooms situated directly adjacent to the Carlos O'Brien's pub. And that presents an even greater need to ensure that there's harmony between uses. But confident of a good fit, we agreed, Carlos agreed with us, to formalize its commitment to harmony in our lease. Now, I've got an excerpt of the lease there, but basically, in the lease, Carlos covenants that they'll operate reasonably expected for a pub, they'll not contravene noise bylaws, and they're more important for us, the business practices shall be in the spirit of harmonizing its operations with future development uses planned for the site. At the recommendation of the RCMP, Carlos has agreed to sign a good neighbor agreement. And a good neighbor agreement is made between the RCMP and the City of Nanaimo and the licensed establishment. It formalizes their commitment to being a responsible corporate citizen and to manage noise in accordance with noise bylaws. Further to the management responsibility, the building design itself actually contributes to controlling sound. In this case, patio doors will remain closed because the pub has a sophisticated heating and air conditioning system in there. And basically, it's designed to maintain optimal climate control inside. Propping doors open would defeat the usefulness of the system. So Mr. Henry said that those doors would be closed. The building has no opening windows to let sound out. That's also part of that system. And the building features thicker, fully insulated walls, roof, and floor. And the new entrance to the pub is no longer facing the neighborhood. It's actually moved to the northeast corner of the platform, facing away from the water. Away from the neighborhood and looking over the water to Sealand. Little picture. The pub in the neighborhood is buffered by the liquor store, which is located between. So you can see in the picture that the neighborhood to the right and the old pub entry was facing the neighborhood. And now, I don't know, we can't see it on ours, but...
yeah, you can.
No,
They can see it.
Okay.
We also have a close-up here, too.
The pub entry is actually now quite a ways away with the pub and the patio looking out over the marina and looking towards Newcastle Island. Now, the other thing, it's not showing on this picture here because this was a design panel rendering, but the patio facing the marina will have a 5-foot high glass railing on it now. We decided that after the fact. Now, traffic, that's another control issue that needs to be addressed. Basically, there is a management plan, and just so you know, the patron parking that's allocated to Carlos exceeds the zoning requirements. But further to that, the marina patrons, who make up a large percentage of the pub patrons, have their own designated parking outside of the Carlos allocated spaces. And all parking is controlled now by Robbins Parking, helping to confine the use of our parking to patrons. Carlos Abayans have been in business since 1987. Their long-term success has come from connecting with their community and through building relationships. They've embraced our community and are building relationships right now, and we're very excited about our future together. Staff supports an occupant load of 190 persons and 38 on the patio, subject to council's approval. And because we're certain our community will find Carlos to be engaging, friendly, professionally run, and a complement to Nanaimo's waterfront, we ask for your support.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just going to say that I think the Residents Association had some concerns about parking, and I believe they raised it with you, and I may be corrected that I think they were satisfied, hopefully.
We put out an email to the residents and the Residents Association, and they came back with comments with respect to noise, and we're wondering about building design. And we responded similarly to this with the salient points, and they were satisfied with that, it seems. Mr. Harrison wrote a letter. I wish he'd called me earlier so we could actually sit down and talk about some more, but it's fine because what I put in the presentation basically addresses the issues that he's raised. And I thank him for that, and I also thank him for indicating that they continue to support the project itself. Yeah. It's actually very important that we have that relationship with the residents. And I've been really proactive with that, as well, Ms. Patrick would know, over the course of the amendments to the OCP and everything else with respect to our neighborhood plan. And I make no secret of the fact that nothing is going to be a success in that area of the woods if 3,200 residents in the Brecken neighborhood don't embrace it as part of their community. So.
One final question from me, and I'm certainly supportive of this in principle. You were saying the building is somewhat sealed, airtight, if you wish, for preservation of temperature in warm and cold. But I'm wondering about service to the patio. You're going to have the doors open on a regular basis for servers to go back and forth unless...
We're going to install an automatic door opener for servers so that they don't have to leave the door open to go in and out.
Okay, good, thank you. So we have some other questions. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Worship. Well, firstly, I'm going to be very pleased and delighted to make the recommendation. But prior to that, I would just like to say that it's really gratifying to see members of our community inside and outside that have been well established in our province and have provided outstanding service to the communities that they've been in, be it Kelowna to Kamloops to Prince George, Vernon and beyond, Salmon Arm. So I compliment the operator for having the trust and confidence in our city to make this significant investment, because make no mistake that this industry is a significant investment. So the trust and confidence that the developer has. The building prior to was old and tired, my apologies, and it's been vacant for quite some time, waiting for somebody with the initiative and the intuitiveness of Mr. Henry to step up and make this one of his, I'm sure, staple sites. So, in the waterfront improvement that it will have to the local area, and the fact that I just heard Mr. Stone say that the property may be home to future developments is very, very welcome. So I just want to say that very appreciative of the fact that you're willing to invest in our community, the employment opportunities that will exist that don't exist now. I think we all recall Boston Pizza, locally, that you may or may not recall, was struggling, and it is now one of the top franchises in the country, and we've positioned that with many people that were left unemployed. So my compliments to you, and I look forward to seeing your establishment open. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have a lot to add to what Councillor Bestwick said, but I would like to say that this looks really exciting to me, and glad to see how sensitive you are to the relationship with the neighborhood. That's a really good start, and happy to see that neighborhood animated with such a really neat concept. So thank you. And I'll be happy to second Councillor Bestwick's motion when the time comes.
Okay. I see no further questions on that now. I might just mention that I'm not all that familiar with Carlos O'Brien's, and I'm sure this is going to be a very significant and very positive addition to the waterfront, and I'm very excited, as others have said, to see it. But I must say that a lot of my faith goes with Mark Stone, who I have a lot of respect for and I've known him for many years, and he does what he says. I support that. So the motion's been made and seconded. All those...
Your Worship, there's no motion on the floor.
I think Councillor Bestwick moved it and Councillor Brennan seconded it, is my understanding.
Staff recommendation.
Also move staff's recommendation, Your Worship.
One there. And I think Councillor Brennan seconded all of those motions.
Good.
Are we happy? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for waiting all night for that.
Now we move into liquor license application LA 98 at 1630 East Wellington Road, the Royal Canadian Legion, Mount Benson Branch 256. The purpose to obtain council approval for an application to the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch for a permanent change to the existing licensed establishment to increase the hours of liquor service 1.5 hours earlier at 10:30 a.m. and to decrease the hours of late night liquor service from 1 a.m. to 12:30 a.m. So the staff, the motion is there. If someone would like to.
The report for information.
Okay. Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Trapping bylaw. Purpose to obtain council approval for a proposed bylaw to prohibit the use of body gripping traps within the city of Nanaimo. And there's a staff recommendation. I think Councillor Patchy wanted to move that.
I'd like to move the staff recommendation that council receive for information the report regarding trapping bylaw 2013 number 7183.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Okay, we've got. Let me see, Councillor Kipp, you're on, and Councillor Johnson.
Thank
Councillor
you.
Kipp.
I absolutely appreciate the fact that we're moving this forward. I think it's hugely important. One thing I would like to do in our descriptions and explanations of our words, we don't have the word humane in there. Do we need to add the word humane so that when we're treating animals humanely, we have a definition, or is that? Because it's not in the definition.
Your Worship, we have just mirrored other bylaws, and that's the result of this. We could certainly add it if you would like it to go back and
Oh, no, I
reconsider.
don't want to slow it, but maybe we need to bring in something forward and look at the word humane in there so people have a description of what humane means. Oh, maybe we can, I'll pass it this time, I support it, but maybe next time we can review or if we get more information when it comes back. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to thank staff, Your Worship, for acting on this bylaw so quickly, and very grateful for their actions on it. It's to support the community and all we intended. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff, I have one question in regards to the report. If council adopts the bylaw, will we actually be able to enforce it and up until the point that the ministry approves it or doesn't approve it?
Your Worship, we're proposing to take the bylaw to third reading and then refer it off to the province for its consideration.
And so that's where my point comes is if it goes and we pass third reading, what happens after that point in time? That it goes to the ministry, and from my understanding, the ministry says they are not approving these until they do their own review.
That's correct. So we would await the province to recognize this as permitted to be approved at local government.
So essentially, this would just be a symbolic measure then, up until the time that whether or not the ministry would approve it.
Right. I think it's significant in terms of its signal to the province that we're on board with other communities that are looking for the same process to be followed and approvals.
Okay. Thank you. And I will say that I will vote in favor of receiving the report, but I won't vote in favor of the bylaws, as I don't see the point of voting for bylaws up until the point that we can actually have them enforceable. So just so you know, I will vote in favor of the report, but I won't be voting in favor of the bylaws as attached.
Okay, Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. Well, I will be voting for this, and I will be voting for the bylaws as well, because, Councillor Anderson, this is much more than symbolic. We all know that the township of Gibson and the city of Surrey have something like this on the books. And while it may not be enforceable now, because the ministry wishes to wait and deal with the UBCM resolution that was passed this summer, it is much more than symbolism. It is a lobbying effect. I think that's the word that Councillor Brennan used a few weeks ago so succinctly. It is serving notice to the provincial government that this is how this municipality feels about the use of body gripping devices, which are inhumane, and that we want their attention and we want them to act on it, and this is what we want. And if we don't do it this way, we'll never have it. I'm completely in favor of this.
As am I. Okay, Councillor Beswick.
Thank you, Worship. Clearly share Councillor Patchy's perspective and his comments. We absolutely need to send a strong message to other municipalities as well, and I would like to hope that we could do that unanimously. And this is a really significant bylaw for us to enact, And while we may not be able to police it per se with penalties attached, we as the city also contract trappers to undertake business within the city limits, of which have utilized this method of trapping. And I would more than think that that method would be eliminated by the city of Nanaimo's needs and requirements when it occurs to not be using this method. And I would just like staff to confirm and clarify that that is the case.
Yes, Your Worship, through policy already established by council, staff is not using trapping at this time, body gripping trapping.
On city land?
But any methods that we use would not be, any that we're authorizing would not be body gripping by policy of council.
Thank you. And I think it's very important that we continue on with that message. And so I look forward to this, receiving this report and the bylaws to follow. Thank you.
Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to add to what people have said. This isn't entirely symbolic, and it isn't entirely a lobby either, because if we pass this at third reading and it proceeds to the minister and the minister approves it, bingo, we have our bylaw. We don't have to start at the beginning. So it is 3 stages down the road now, just sitting waiting for the minister to see the light.
You're going to go again? Councillor Pachi.
Could I move the bylaw?
You can. I just want to make one comment, if I can myself. And it's information anyway, but what's that?
Motion on the floor before the bylaws.
Yeah, there's a motion in the bylaw, and one you support and one you may not. We'll have to wait for the vote on that. I just want to say I totally support it too. And, you know, I think a point that's important is that we end up often being looked upon by smaller communities when it comes to a lot of different decisions to be made. And a recent example is the Central Vancouver Island business license policy that we put through. And we contacted Parksville, Port Alberni, and some of the other communities, and they were waiting to see how Nanaimo decided before they went ahead with it. And I think this is a good case in point. I think that if we do pass this trapping bylaw, which I certainly intend to support, that it'll be a message to other communities on the island that maybe it's time to make a decision on this. So, Councillor Pachi, you're on.
You still have to vote on the staff recommendation first.
So that's been moved and seconded?
Yes.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Do you want to move the
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. I move that trapping bylaw 2013, number 7183, to regulate, prohibit, and impose requirements respecting body gripping traps or devices for animals and wildlife pass first reading.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Move that trapping bylaw 2013, number 7183, pass second reading.
Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? And just before you start, Councillor Anderson is opposed. Balance of Councillor is in favor of the second point. And I just want to ask, just for confirmation, I know there were a couple of errors on the previous third reading on 2 previous ones. Is this correct that we can vote on this third reading for this particular item?
Yes, this is correct.
Thank you. Thank you. So,
and so finally then, Your Worship, I move that trapping bylaw 2013, number 7183, pass third reading.
Moved and seconded. No discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? We have Councillor Anderson opposed. Balance of Councillor in favor. The motion passes. Unresolved building deficiencies. Notice on title, section 5.7. It's requested the council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to unresolved building deficiencies for the properties listed below. And the first property is 90 McClary Street, illegal construction of a secondary suite without a building permit. Is there anyone in attendance tonight that would like to speak to matters related to 90 McClary Street? Second property is 35 Princess Street, illegal construction of a secondary suite without a building permit. Is anyone in attendance that would like to speak to matters related to 35 Princess Street? And seeing none, if somebody would like to make the recommendation.
Move staff's recommendation, Your Worship.
Second. Moved and seconded. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. And we move into funding options. 9A, funding options for the mitigation of the Colliery Dams, to be introduced by Mr. Ian Howitt, General Manager, Corporate Services. Mr. Howitt.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is an information report on funding options for Council to consider when the Colliery Dams planning process finishes in the early new year. And the intent is to provide Council with several options that that's at Council's disposal. Likely would be a combination of funding opportunities to address the cost to mitigate the works for Colliery Dams. There's 5 components that are identified in the report. One is funding through general revenue taxation, and that would likely take the form of reallocating costs from other asset or capital projects for 2014, 2015. Option B is to use reserve and reserve fund balances, and staff have gone through a tertiary review of some of our reserves and reserve funds and have identified 3 in the report that Council could utilize right away. And of course, if there's further direction from Council, we could dig deeper into the reserve and reserve funds as well. That also could potentially take away or reallocate funds from other assets or capital works that were planned in those future years. There's also short-term borrowing as an option, and that does not require assent of the electors. That's a point that I just wanted to make clear. That's for funding under 5 years. Then there's also long-term borrowing, which of course requires electoral assent, which could take the form of either an AAP, an alternative approval process, or a referendum. And as Council recalls, we did an AAP on the water treatment plant, I believe last year, to get the approval from the electorate to borrow for the water treatment plant. And then, of course, a local service area, and we've thrown that in because it is a mechanism for Council to consider, but it is not one that we would certainly recommend. And that's it.
Okay. So the we have Councillor Kipp. You had a point you wanted to make?
Well, Your Worship, I believe this should be pulled from the agenda. We've talked over the weeks about the collaborative process with the Colliery Dam Preservation Society, with SFN. I heard last week when our budget discussions with Public Works that their system is normally they plan something, they design it, they construct it and operate it. We're doing that in our budget process, yet this is something different now.
Okay.
We haven't, excuse me, Your Worship, we haven't determined.
We have a speaker before you.
Do.
I thought you were just going to make a couple of comments, but Mr. Tim McGrath is a delegation prior to you.
Oh, okay, so I'll let it go. I'll repeat it then.
Yep, that's fine.
Thank you.
Mr. McGrath, welcome, sir. And then we'll deal with the staff recommendation.
Good evening, Council. My name is Tim McGrath, 459 Prudhoe. I'm pleased to see staff is coming back to report on item number 6 as set out in the 21st of October Council meeting. It does seem a little premature, though, and I think Councillor Kipp and I are in agreement, but I'll have to wait now until he talks. It does seem a little premature that the technical committee has yet to even select an engineering firm that is looking for a solution. For city staff to bring anything more about funding options is amiss, since the technical committee is still far from knowing what is going to be the solution, let alone how much it's going to cost. It is still evident that the city staff knows that it will be a minimum of $7 million and only $2.5 million has been set aside. So to reduce any potential sticker shock and any impact, no matter what solution is finally selected, staff should be instructed to continue their attempt to come up with a funding solution. So far they found $3.6 million, or about halfway to the minimum. I would suggest that Council accept the report and the issue be handled once again once the city staff has a better understanding on the cost of repairs. But in the meantime, staff is to do their best to find a minimum of $3 million. One of the items of interest and is item C on the municipal security issuing resolution. I also have in front of me a copy of a debt service policy dated back in February of 2013. So I am a little bit amiss as to why the matter is coming before council at this point. You already have a policy, and I'm just wondering what the reason for it coming forward. But I'll be more than happy to listen to Councillor Kipp and his issue. There's no doubt that it was supposed to be a collaborative issue. I do note that it's being brought before council while the Nanaimo First Nations is going through an election period. I would respectfully submit that they be consulted and that matter be looked after after their election. I have no further comments.
Thank you. You had a question for the delegation?
No, just a statement to the delegation.
Well, look, to the delegation.
To the delegation.
Okay, go ahead, and then Councillor Kipp has something to add.
I want Mr. McGraw to know that I asked the same question this morning, and I did get a response from staff as to why they were alerting us or advising on this now, and I would like to staff, maybe Mr. Howard giving me the same answer that I had this evening, and maybe that will help.
Your Worship, the report's coming forward now for a couple of reasons. One, that there was a lot of speculation in the community about how this was going to be funded, and this was to lay it out in a more legal framework so that it was clear to everybody the processes that were available to council. The other was that we felt that it had a lot to do with openness and transparency. We felt that it was important that all of this information be up front and available to everybody at the beginning of this process, so there was a clear understanding of eventually when this planning process completed that there'd be no surprises about how that outcome would be funded. It would all be laid out ahead of time.
Your Worship, and just to add to Mr. Howitt, for Mr. McGrath's benefit, the report was forwarded and the SFN has received it, as well as the Colliery Dam Society last Friday.
Good. Okay. You have nothing further to add. Councillor Kipp, did you want to...
I have no questions for the delegation.
No, I think we're finished. Do you have a question for the delegation? No. That's it, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Kipp.
No, just getting back to my point, I just believe this is premature. I know the city's trying to understand this whole process as we're moving forward. And I mean, now we've had, in the last year, we've had $7 million to take it down, $30 million to replace it was the first one. Then we went to 7, and then we're going 15, 20, and now we're putting up how we're going to pay for all these guesses. And it's disappointing that we're not, I mean, I know we said to engage these groups, and maybe that wasn't the word in the motion that I really realized when we said engage, because there's a difference between engagement and collaboration. And I've had a ton of emails from the Colliery Dam and talked to people from SFN, and they're thinking this is moving fast. And this is just my opinion. I know I'm out to lunch on how this whole thing's going on. I've looked at all sorts of things, and I have to go after the provincial government on their mortality rates. And I've just sent a bunch of stuff out on morbidity and mortality, a bunch of articles to council about how we're so far off on our mortality rate on this. It's just way off. I sent out 2012 figures for world's worst disasters, and we're way out. So this whole process is moving in a really odd shape to me. The process is not, it's not laid out as, I mean, we went and did the short term and the long term, even without Colliery Dam and SFN. We're moving forward on them. I'm not certain we're being collaborative. So I'm really disappointed this come forward now. It starts to dig me that there's something else to this. It just really does. So I'll dig more and try and find out why.
Okay, I think it's important that this is simply an information report that we'll be receiving. There's not a really decision on movement on it at this point. Councillor Vestwick?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Your Worship. Well, of course, indeed, I appreciate the efforts and the work that's gone into this, and not unlike Councillor Patchy when he went with Councillor Kipp to the new card lock and he was pushed. And so being pushed over a dam now is a little bit more tenuous. I'm just really curious about how we are choosing to discern how we're going to pay for something, and we don't know what the mitigation plan is yet. And so that, to me, just from my perspective, causes me cause for concern. We've spent $800,000+ to date on the information that we've gathered and so on. We're proposing another $400,000 of the $2.5 million out of reserves. We're contemplating somewhere it states, to provide council with options for addressing the funding of mitigation plans. I'd like to see the plans and the options that are available to us before I honestly start to consider, how and where we're going to take the monies from, or find the monies, reserves or elector assent or otherwise. It also refers in here that in the report, which again I appreciate, that the $7 million that was allocated originally is no longer valid. Well, I have to wonder if the $7 million that was originally estimated was ever valid. So that concerns me. So we're throwing that number out there like it is the number. I recall not too long ago that we had some reports identifying that, for 5.6 with a contingency built in, we had another option or alternative for a mitigation plan for this, and now we're back here talking about what might we spend the next millions of dollars on. And I'd like to get through the process first with the technical committees, and everybody else has been so generous with their time and their expertise and their knowledge to get to this point. So for me, I don't even want to talk about the $5 or $6 or $7 or $10 million. I'd rather identify what's inside that $400,000 that we're saying that we're going to spend in the next few months or however long, to tell us what we're going to spend on the mitigation plan that we don't know what the mitigation plan is yet. So I don't even know if I want to receive the report. I appreciate it. I'm thankful to have it, but I don't even know if I want to receive it, because to be quite honest, it doesn't make sense to me what we're being asked to do is to provide direction, if it is, on where the money is going to come from. I could be totally wrong on if that's what it is, because certainly I know that when we receive reports for information, it triggers move forward. If we don't say anything about it, then we didn't provide any notions or notionalities of what it is that council's thinking. So if we just raise our hand and say, yep, council, yep, good, received the report, then we're moving on with, no, we told you we're going to spend $400,000 more dollars. We told you. It was in that report. And I'm not comfortable spending $400,000 more dollars if I don't know what we're spending it on. Thank you.
Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm quite happy to receive this report. I think what it does is it says to us, and I know we've taken extra careful care to understand our budgets for 2014 and to some extent the earlier budget too. We are a council that's interested in those things and is drilling down to really deep into the system to try to understand how we spend our money. And I think that this is just that. It doesn't request any decision. It says, ultimately, of course, we are going to have to pay for whatever plan we choose. And here are the various sources of funds. These are the balances in those budgets, in that budget line. Here's the balances. Now, these are your options for payment of that. That's all it is it tells us what the balances are, and then these are the options. Because I know there's been considerable confusion about when a referendum is triggered. I think that this report does a really good job outlining how you might pay for it in different instances, and how you might have the alternate approval process, how you might proceed with the referendum. But it's not directive in any way. It doesn't ask us to decide on that. It just says, here's the information. It's not just information for us, because I know the community has had some interest in knowing how does, and there are people on both sides of the referendum issue, right? So all this does is it says, here's the different ways that you will be able to fund whatever choice you make, depending on whatever cost you come up with. That's all it is, and I think that most people appreciate having that kind of information. I don't think it can come too soon, and I'm sure that the technical committee will appreciate having that information about how this will ultimately be funded, no matter what the cost is. These are the choices on the ultimate funding of this. It's just like when you go to buy a car, you want to know how much money or what your financing is going to cost, and that's kind of what this is. I don't see the problem.
Sorry. Okay, Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to reiterate some of the things that Councillor Brennan has already said. And before I do, we should be looking at this in the framework of why are we even talking about this right now? And I think we already know why we're talking about this, is we know that there is going to be a cost, whether it be a year from now, 2 years from now, we know that there's going to be a cost that is associated with whether it be the repair or rebuilding or renaturalization of the colliery dams. And as within our strategic plan as well, it talks about openness and having a dialogue with the community, and I think that's important. And it's interesting enough that if we actually go back about probably 2.5 hours ago with the cultural plan, there was discussion about how we need to have the numbers with the cultural plan before we even move forward. So I would say with this plan that it's important that we do look at the numbers as well, the potential numbers, so that we can evaluate it when it comes to that time of discussing this with the technical committee. So as Councillor Brennan mentioned, I would think that the technical committee would actually value having this framework and these ideas available to them, so when they're discussing it, they will be able to make their recommendation, and eventually when it comes to council will be able to make a decision as well. But as the motion says, we are just receiving this report for information, so there is no decision that is to be made tonight. It's just that council should be aware of the costs that are associated with moving forward with the mitigation of the colliery dams.
Thank you. Councillor Gibb, can we pass you by and let some of the first-time speakers go, and then we'll come back to you. Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I want to thank Councillor Brennan for bringing up the comparison to buying the car. So husband and wife discuss they're going to go out and buy a car, and whoever looks after the books in the family says, well, I worked out the numbers, and here's what the range of options are in your financing and so on and so forth, and I realized that she's figured out that I'm going to buy a $100,000 car. Wait a minute, no, I was going to go buy a Honda Civic. Why are you giving me the numbers for, how we can afford this Mercedes? Because it's $100,000. We already know from our own reports that 2 brand new dams will cost us between 6.2 and 11.2, with 8.6 being in the medium of the bell curve. Why have we got numbers here at $30 million? This report sends out, in my opinion, the wrong message. Because people are going to be saying, what are you doing spending $30 million on those dams? I know I can build 2 brand new ones. Remove the old ones, build 2 brand new ones for 8.6. I thank you very much for the report. Thank you, and we need that. But I think we've gone way out of line here. I think we're sending the wrong message by this report.
Okay, Councillor Graves.
Thank you, Worship. Without the dramatics, sorry about that. I had to throw that in, Jim.
You're just motionless, that's all, Teddy.
Come on now. Remember this disrespect stuff? Let's not get into that.
He's emotionless.
I wanted to reiterate what the previous speakers had said, but they stole all my thunder. Basically, we're just receiving the report. This is just information. The staff has put down basically where we're going to get the money from if we have to get the money, and it's simply that. I think we're reading far too much into this. It's just information. I must say, though, that we have been digging down in the budget lately. The past, I don't know how many meetings we've had, 4 or 5 meetings, and this is the same type of thing. We've always asked for information ahead of time, and this is presented to us. You can look at it, or you don't have to look at it. But I'm pleased, actually, that this has come out, because I was wondering where we would get the dough to do these things with. So, thanks.
Okay, Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. We directed staff to proceed with the long-term mitigation process in October, and this is a beginning. And I'm grateful for the report. I believe the community will be grateful for the report. We were criticized during the process, the strategic plan process, about lack of communication and bombarding the community with the issue of the dam. So I feel certain that the citizens will be grateful to receive this report, Your Worship, and I'm very happy to receive it myself.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. Well, my worries of this morning have come somewhat to fruition. It is only a report, I know that. But sometimes there's a difference between the bureaucratic veracity and directness as opposed to timing possibilities. And I concur with Councillor McKay that I think that the timing is not quite right. Most of the stuff in here I have known for a long time, so to me it's nothing new. From a point of being open and transparent, of course, staff is right that they want to get the message out to the citizenry of Nanaimo. But sometimes we have to make choices. And if I'd had my druthers, I would have waited a little bit with this. I don't think it would have done any harm to wait until the technical committee came to some sort of conclusion. But it's a report. It's out. I'll be voting for it because that's all it is to me. I've seen it.
Okay, and for my part, I'll be supporting it as well. And again, it's just an information report. You know, one of the things that we did earlier, we as a council decided that we needed to start earlier on debating the budget because we waited too long and then found out we didn't have all the time needed to debate the budget at length. I think by putting out these options for consideration without a decision is important. I'm glad to receive the information. I found it interesting to read, and all it is just a report to council. So that said, the motion is on the floor. So would somebody like to move the motion?
So moved, Your Worship.
And moved by, did you get someone there? Councillor Anderson moved it. Councillor, Johnson seconded it. Well, you both held your hand up. I was going to try to pick one. Councillor Kipp, sorry, before we vote.
Nice try.
I gave you, sorry, I forgot that.
You know, it's interesting that I hear this. I thought we should have cleared this with the technical committee. That means sending it out before Saturday or Friday, whenever they received it. So I thought that'd be collaborative. When I hear the confusion I had on the cultural plan, we had a plan without money. There I had a plan without money, and I said I needed both of them. And now here I have money without a plan. You guys are confusing me. It was fine to have the cultural plan out. There's 6 years of spending. No money attached to it because it's just new. Well, we're just new into this technical committee now, and now I've got a price without a plan. So I'm confused. We're facilitating the provincial government That's what we're doing here. We're rushing to get, oh, the provincial government's going to be all over us. They're going to come and tear the dams out if we don't do something. Well, man, we just checked out on beavers for the province, and only one of us said, oh, we can't do that. But now we're going along with the province, just at everything they need. They need this information. Oh, what are you going to do next? Because some guys in an office that waste our money on no money getting to children, they're tearing out dams, they're costing Hydro millions. Their mortality rates are ridiculous. Their likelihood is ridiculous, and we're just following their plan. Here it is. You got a plan here with money and no thing to do, no design. And in the cultural plan that you brought up, that you referenced, Councillor Anderson, you said, oh, well, we have this beautiful plan, but no money. So I'm confused just with that in itself. And the planning, design, construction, operation of what our department says they normally do, and it's not normal this time. So I'm just really confused at how you view this the same as something else we've done. It's premature. It's just a process that we're not even being collaborative on, and I'm just disappointed with it. So.
Okay. Councillor Anderson, we'll give you the last kick at the cat here.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that I'm sorry that Councillor Kipp feels the way that he does, because my comment wasn't even in regards to any of the comments that he made. It was actually about a comment that Mr. McGrath made. So.
Okay. Final point. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? We have Councillor Beswick, Councillor Kipp. Opposed? Balanced council in favor. The motion passes. Moving into corporate strategic plan. Sorry, hang on here now. Yeah, the corporate strategic plan implementation process. Purpose to provide information on the process of implementing the corporate strategic plan. Would someone like to move? Move. Second. Yeah. No discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving in. Do you oppose it?
No, I just wanted to see if there's any financial implications of accepting this report.
The question was, is there any financial implications to accepting this report?
Your Worship, it's just an update on where we're at. If council would like us to stop on any of the initiatives, now's the time.
But we're just receiving it for information. Thank you.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Move into municipal security issuing resolution, the water treatment plant. Purpose to obtain council authorization to carry out the final phase of the long-term borrowing required to fund construction of the water treatment plant. Councillor Bennett, do you want to move that to get on the floor?
Yes, I would move that council approve borrowing from the Municipal Finance Authority of BC as part of the 2014 spring borrowing session. 9.2 million is authorized through bylaw number 7127, a bylaw to authorize the borrowing of $22.5 million for the construction of a water treatment plant, and that the Regional District of Nanaimo be requested to consent to the borrowing over a 20-year term and include the borrowing in their security issuing bylaw.
Seconded. Okay. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Establishment of a regional emission reduction reserve fund. Purpose to obtain, to establish a reserve fund in accordance with Section 188 of the Community Charter for the purpose of accumulating funds for investment in regional emission reduction projects. And the motion is before you. Someone like to move that?
Your Worship?
Yes.
I would move that council receive the report pertaining to Regional Emission Reduction Reserve Fund, establishing bylaw 2013, number 7184.
Is there a seconder? Seconded. I see. Councillor Padgett, you had to talk on this. Go ahead.
Yes. I wonder if it would be possible for staff to, in large lines, just explain to the citizenry and again to me what is involved here, what it means.
Thank you, Your Worship. What has happened is that the member municipalities of the Regional District of Nanaimo have banded together and have an agreement that says that we will share pool money for doing regional projects to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And I believe this probably came out of the direction that had previously been in place where it appeared that the province was going to require municipalities to contribute to a provincial agency such as the Pacific Carbon Trust. And municipalities all around BC started looking at ways to keep that money in their own community, and I believe that that's why the Council of Nanaimo and the other councils, along with the Regional District of Nanaimo, have agreed to this process. There is no project that are chosen yet, and Council can, in any year, choose not to make their contributions to the regional fund. But until such projects are chosen, the money remains in a reserve fund in the city's account, so we maintain control of the money.
Thank you.
Councillor Kipp.
Yeah, that was brought forward about 4 years ago through the State Sustainability Select Committee out of the region, and we didn't want to pay money to the Pacific Carbon Trust and give it to the government, so we formed the Carbon Trust here. I think currently in across Canada there's some 600 company carbon hunters that are trying to buy up land and store carbon in the ground, so it's an interesting field coming forward.
Okay, Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just going to, through you to staff, ask staff if have there been any projects to date that we funded through this GHG emissions plan?
There have been no regional projects. The City of Nanaimo has done for the last 3 or 4 years is that we have estimated what our contribution to the carbon fund might have been, and internally we've raised that money and spent it on internal projects to reduce our own GHG emissions to such time as when we were required to be carbon neutral, we would have done the best we can to reduce our carbon emissions. So we've spent that within our own organization up to now. This is the first year of the regional fund, so this is the first contribution to the regional fund.
Thank you.
Okay, now, we don't have a motion yet, do we? Motion moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Move into the bylaws. If someone would be...
The Regional Emission Reduction Reserve Fund Bylaw 2013, number 7184, to establish a reserve fund in accordance with Section 188 of the Community Charter for the purpose of accumulating funds for investment in regional emission reduction projects. Pass first reading.
Seconder? Councillor Patchy seconded. I see no discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And
the Regional Emissions Reduction Reserve Fund Bylaw 2013, number 7184, pass second reading.
Councillor Patchy. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
And the Regional Emissions Reduction Reserve Fund Bylaw 2013, number 7184, pass third reading.
Seconded by Councillor Patchy. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving into 2013 Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Requirements. Purpose: to provide for temporary borrowing of funds required to meet the current lawful expenditures of the City of Nanaimo pursuant to Section 177 of the Community Charter. And there's a motion.
I would move that, Your Worship.
You're on?
Yep. I would move that Council receive for information the report regarding Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Bylaw 2013, number 7185.
Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. You want to do the bylaws?
Sure.
Please.
I'd move that Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Bylaw 2013, number 7185, to provide for the temporary borrowing of funds required to meet the current lawful expenditures of the City of Nanaimo pursuant to Section 177 of the Community Charter, pass first reading.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
And that the Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Bylaw 2013, number 7185, pass second reading.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
And finally, that Revenue Application Borrowing Bylaw 2013, number 7185, pass third reading.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving into purchasing reviews, the purpose is to obtain Council's approval to perform a value for money review of the Waterworks contract.
So moved.
Moved?
Second.
Moved and seconded. No discussion. All those in favor? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Is it, we're looking at hiring a consultant to review. Is it worth, and that, I know we had mentioned some other contracts possibly for review, and then that, would it be an ad hoc committee of council would be valued, or can I ask staff of that?
Your Worship, this is certainly something that typically a finance committee that would handle. If council would like to have an ad hoc committee lend its hand, then I'm okay with that.
Or should we just bring the report forward to a council committee, finance committee? Would that?
That would be my recommendation, is that we
Okay.
just move
That's
forward
fine.
to the budget meeting.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving into community services, Caledonia Park and Rotary Bowl option update. Purpose to provide council with an update on options concerning the Caledonia Park and the Rotary Bowl.
Your Worship,
Oh, just on standby one. Councillor Brennan, are you okay?
Well, Your Worship, when I review this, it seems to me that this is a report regarding expenditures for Caledonia Park.
Okay.
I know that there is some discussion about the future, but that's not today. This is
It's an information report.
This is expenditures for Caledonia Park.
Okay, thank you.
So I don't think I have an apprehension of bias to be concerned.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor.
So, Your Worship, I'd like to move staff's recommendation that council receive for information the report regarding the options update for Caledonia Park and the Rotary Bowl.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Discussion, Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, I appreciate the report. I don't know what the update is because I'm confused on page 195 or 3 of 7, as the report states. So page 195, it states in the third paragraph that an improvement process was presented to the Parks, Rec, and Culture Commission in 2012 and was begun in 2013, this year. This plan, when completed, was to address field improvements, pedestrian and service vehicle access improvements, grandstand upgrades, lighting, change rooms, washrooms, and other amenity improvements as identified through the planning process. With renewed partnership, this is key here, with renewed partnership opportunity to be discussed for Rotary Bowl through the NDSS master planning process, the Caledonia planning process will be postponed. So then I go down 2 paragraphs to, in the interim, staff recommends City Council consider through the budget process temporary improvements to Caledonia Stadium. These improvements are the removal of the current stadium and replacing it with portable bleachers, as well as bringing in portable trailers to expand the change room and washroom facilities on site. The work is expected to cost up to $250,000 and will benefit Caledonia Park, regardless of the direction City Council will take regarding stadium redevelopment. So I find those 2 statements contradictory. I don't understand. Are we stopping any more work down at Caledonia? Are we continuing with the work? Or what are we doing?
You can update council.
Mayor Rattan, in answer to Councillor Bestwick's question, in the second paragraph there where we're talking about address field improvements and service, that was a long-term perspective to deal with long-term planning of developing a community stadium. And so that's what the idea was, is that as we work through and give input to the school district on the NDS master planning process, that would give council options for determining if that would be the best, provide good opportunity to go in that direction, or to again focus your energies back on the development of Caledonia Park. In the last paragraph, we are talking more just interim, so that groups that do use that stadium, VI Raiders being an example, that we would do some temporary improvements there. Those improvements would be to take out the bleachers, which are really not that easy to watch an event from, and have some safety concerns, as any of you have gone there. It's not the best place to be in the bleachers, but to look at portable bleachers for that site, and those portable bleachers could then be taken to other locations, including Rotary, if council chose to partner and go in that direction, or to use them at Caledonia Park, if indeed you wanted to continue in that direction. So that provides you with some flexibility, but still helps us in the short term hosting events at Caledonia.
So, Your Worship, I think what Mr. Hickey is mentioning is that there was a grand plan for Caledonia to do some renovations and have the football team stay and play in that facility. Given that the football team and the plans for a joint use of Rotary Bowl, we're saying we'll put those on hold. However, there is this this joint use plan for Rotary will take some time, if not years, to actually come to fruition. So there's temporary means that need to be done now to maintain the football team playing in the facility at Caledonia.
Which begs my question. It states in the paragraph, the Caledonia planning process will be postponed. Then I go on to read that the work is expected to cost up to $250,000 and will benefit Caledonia Park regardless of the direction City Council chooses to take. So are we proceeding with the upgrades to Caledonia Park as originally proposed or forecasted up to $250,000, or is it postponed?
I think the grand plan, I can be corrected, is for $6 million worth of improvements at either facility. So the decision on where we spend that money is going to come out of the joint use proposal. However, we don't want to limit the football team's ability to continue playing while we make those decisions. So council will have to make this decision at an upcoming budget meeting, whether you would like to spend the $250,000 to do the upgrades that Mr. Hickey mentioned.
Well, thank you, Worship. I won't belabor this. It's getting late. And with all due respect, that's not what this report says to me. It's not the way that I read it. And I haven't seen a grand plan for $6 million for Rotary Bowl or Caledonia Park or what that looks like. If there's a grand plan out there for $6 million, as you just said, that will take years, I haven't seen it yet. And so if we're going to start talking about facility developments in those numbers, then I'd like to see it before I make any comment on it, because I haven't seen it yet.
Well, Your Worship, this is a great discussion for the budget because council doesn't have to spend the $250,000. Right now, we have facilities that are operating, and council, I've received comments from councillors that we think this facility is less than adequate for the football team to play at. And that's clearly a council decision whether we would like to spend some money. And you'd have to spend it either in absence of knowing what the grand plan could be, or we can do some work with you on what that would look like. But at the end of the day, it's council's decision. Thank you, Your Worship,
or thank you, Mr. Swaby, and Your Worship. I appreciate that, but that's a different conversation. That's a different conversation than this report. It's not an answer to the question of, are we postponing the $250,000 Caledonia improvements, as it says in here, or are we not? Because I know this is a report for information, and if I read this, it says to me that the Caledonia planning process will be postponed. Please tell me what I'm missing.
So, Your Worship, as I've tried to explain but not well, the decision to spend the $250,000 would come forward to council for an expenditure. We're proposing that the overall planning process for the Caledonia facility be put on hold until we complete the negotiations with the school board about a joint use proposal for Rotary Bowl. If council doesn't want to do that, that's fine as well, but that's what we're proposing. So nothing will be spent, period, on either facility until council decides.
Well, if I recall, if I may, we made a commitment, and we made a public commitment that we were going to upgrade Caledonia Park to an acceptable standard for the BC Football Association, League Association, or whatever, the BCFLCA. And now I'm hearing that we may or may not be. And the bleachers aside, the bleachers are a hazard. They're a safety hazard, period. So they should be gone. No different than the sidewalk outside going into Caledonia Park that was a safety hazard, waiting for something terrible to happen. And when I read through this report, it says to me that there's not enough parking. So we're already predetermining in this report that Caledonia Park isn't worth resurrecting beyond what it currently is, other than throw some portable change rooms and washrooms and new bleachers in there that we can transport all over town and maybe upgrade the field a little bit. And we're not going to get a whole heck of a lot for $250,000. So it concerns me when I read that we're postponing it. I hear that there's a $6 million grand scheme plan for Rotary Bowl or Caledonia that will take years. I'm concerned that we're hearing that the school board or whoever is going to want fair market value and for us to purchase it.
and sharing of its use with multiple agencies. But for us to purchase it, there's a whole lot of discussions that need to happen before we predetermine that 420 parking spaces as currently exist today is not enough.
Your Worship, it is confusing to me what Councillor Bestwick is asking, and I would suggest that a motion be put forward by Councillor Bestwick, which would help clarify where we want to go and see if Council agrees with his motion.
Well, I haven't prepared a motion, but I would suggest that we...
Are you going to make a motion?
Well, I'll put a motion that we put a committee together to establish a interim plan for Caledonia Park, what it looks like, what we're going to do, and how much it's going to cost. Because we're not going to play at Rotary Bowl next year. The football team isn't playing up there.
Okay, but we'll have to come back because we have a motion on the floor now, and we've got 4 more speakers left. So can we come back, Councillor Bestwick, for you? And then,
Sure.
Because we need to deal with the one that's already on there now. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. To start, if I may, and my question is connected to the Rotary Bowl. I remember well having sat on the so-called Joint Use Committee with the school district, VIU, and Nanaimo Track and Field was an important part of that, too, together with Councillor Bestwick and I can't remember the third person. But that turned out to be a bit of an effort in futility. So with this section that you have on the Rotary Bowl, how have the dynamics changed, and how should we expect more or different from this point on?
Mayor Rattan, in answer to Councillor Patchy's question, I guess there is no guarantee of change. NDSS, the school district, is looking at a master planning process for the NDSS site. Their prime consideration in doing that plan is to site a high school and redevelop it. They do use that facility for athletics and sport, as does the community, and that's where there's that opportunity, and they've asked for the city to help to provide input in their planning process to look at those opportunities. So I guess that opens the door once again.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've gone around and around in circles on this one and talked to a lot of people about this particular dilemma that we find ourselves in. I think Rotary Bowl has been a distraction to us since 2006. And we've been, well, what if, and what if we do this, could we do that? And we knew in 2006 when we held our first Canadian Bowl that it was embarrassing in 2006. We haven't spent any money on it since. We're just now 6 years later, 7 years later, getting to the point where we're saying, well, let's do something with this thing. Next year, we will not be able to hold the BC Championship in Nanaimo. The league will not let us. The following year, the Canadian Bowl comes back to British Columbia. There's a good chance that we could compete for that against one of the other conferences. We probably won't be able to hold that in Nanaimo as well. Flip side, I think right now, and I agree with Councillor Kipp in some of our discussions that we've had, that I think right now, and it goes into what Councillor Bestwick's saying, I would like to see us put a motion forward that we start some immediate public engagement on Caledonia Field or Caledonia Rotary options to see what they would like us to do. Because we might find in 2 or 3 months down the road that the majority of the community says, you know what, we want to stick 100% with Caledonia. We don't even want to talk about Rotary. Then we can get on with this project. As it stands right now, we're still doing the, well, what if? We're being very almost wishy-washy. I would like to get some direction from the community on it. However, if we do get to the point where the community says, we want you to invest in Caledonia, or we want to at least be able to hold a championship here next year, I'm fully supportive of spending some money to improve the field particularly if it's got some portability to it. If we could take those bleachers and move them elsewhere, if we got some temporary change rooms in there, I know there's some available in Langley, we could use those somewhere else, as long as we've got as much flexibility as possible. But I think we need to start some community engagement to determine exactly which direction we want to go. And let's get that from the community.
Okay, Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. Yeah, both these are really good community assets, and I believe they've been a lot in part publicly funded, and they weren't private investors that come in and wanted that. The fair market value is an interesting one to me. Will that public capital be reinvested to the charitable organizations that built that? I spent many hours on a charitable board from the Commonwealth Bingo Association with Elwood Wiley and a track and field club and the groups that have helped fund that. So would we in fact return some of that sales to the community groups that actually sussed up the money and donated that facility? So it's an interesting one. Can we remove Caledonia bleachers but leave the building so the temporary bleachers are covered? Have we looked at some of that stuff in this plans? I mean, I'd like to know what we're planning for some of that too. I appreciate the input. Of course, it's another sort of plan, and without finances attacked. How many games do they play there where the place is filled? 6-game schedule, you know, and then the playoffs. And that team has been phenomenal for Nanaimo, there's no doubt. The Raiders have done a phenomenal job. And I believe we should invest in this, this football adventure and the park adventure. But man, it'd be nice to keep both of them because they're just, Caledonia is a phenomenal park and place. It has some parking. And Rotary Bowl has all sorts of assets for those groups we mentioned. But I would like to make sure that if there's fair market value for a public asset, that some of the funds are steered towards those groups somehow that actually fundraised for this.
Okay, Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. Very passionate discussion. Both of the amenities are close to many of our hearts, and we want to see them both maintained and preserved for future generations. But you know, when we talk about asset management, we've committed $1 per capita or 1% per capita for asset management this year. Maybe we should be thinking greater if we want to preserve both. But my question to Parks and Rec Commission is, if we chose, or if we concluded as a group to proceed with the upgrades to Caledonia for the $250,000, what would the time frame be? Could we have it ready for the Raiders next season?
Yes, Your Worship, through the Councillor Johnson. Yes, those would be, if depending on the budget's approved. It's in the 2014 budget now. It's part when we went through some of the budget deliberations. We highlighted that with the council. So depending on when the budget's approved, and if we can proceed with those, we'd hope to have a variety of those things done prior to the next season. And of course, they're not the only users. One team, there's other users of the facility. And again, this is the idea of the interim. So the discussion again is, we do have a planning process. We're just saying, do we want to stop that now while this has other ones going on, or proceed? So council can still direct us to proceed with the planning process that we have now, in tandem with the School District 68 planning process. We're just thinking maybe it's a chance, let's stop, see what happens here again. I know it's been a stop and start over a number of years of what to do.
It makes so much sense to really concentrate on Rotary Bowl because it's in the heart of all of our recreational facilities, and there's the partnership, partnerships that we can fall back on. But the Caledonia may be a good opportunity for our sponsorship ideas. Mm-hmm. So I like Councillor Kipps or Bestwick, I can't remember who suggested, we really look at the Caledonia right now and maybe try and get some sponsorship, get some public input, and gosh knows what we might come up with. We might have people offering to help upgrade this facility in time for next year's season. So.
Did you want to add something to it? Go ahead.
I might be able to add just that we have been talking to Vancouver Island Raiders executive, And if you do temporary bleachers and add some washroom, change room amenities, as Councillor McKay was talking about, they would be able to host provincials and nationals. So we've had some discussion from them because that had been where some of this comment had come to council. So we wanted to make sure that we were doing things that made sense to them and then kind of fit with a long-term plan as well.
Right, good. Thank you.
Go ahead.
One more comment on the budget, I think, is appropriate because we've been trying to cater to council to have a budget process where you have the opportunity to say yes or no to all expenditures that are, even though they're contemplated in past years and even though it's in the budget as a recommendation, we don't anticipate to start these types of activities until you deliberate it with all the rest of the budget increases and decide whether it's a service level that you want to provide or whether you want to remove it. And so that's why it's a little bit confusing, and I apologize for that. But we're trying to facilitate upgrading the facility in time for the football season, but we want council to make the decision as part of the budget process. And that doesn't mean that you can't pull it out if you'd like. That's just why it's like it is.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just two questions. One is through you to staff, is this report asking us to spend any money today? It's just a report for information, is that correct? Mm-hmm. And the second comment or question as well is, it was mentioned earlier that there's been a public response that we were going to upgrade the facilities at Caledonia. I was just wondering when that occurred.
The only thing that we've come to council through the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Commission was an actual planning process to look at the redevelopment and improvement of Caledonia, to come back with a more comprehensive plan. And that's when we're saying, well, that's with this other issue going on with the NDSS campus, to hold that process off. So that might be the one you're
But there hasn't been a public comment saying we are going to upgrade the fields by this date.
No.
Okay. For me, I'm fine with receiving the report as it was mentioned earlier by our staff. It says that it's just an information report and that we can accept it. And if Councillor Bestwick or someone else on council wants to make a suggestion that we form a committee or do something else, I'd be happy to hear what their motion is. But currently the motion on the floor is to receive a report for information, and I'm happy to support that.
Okay, I just want to make a comment myself from my own concerns here that, you know, when you look at Caledonia Park, I think we have to realize that this belongs to the city of Nanaimo, and Rodeo Bowl does not. And so if we do have a tenant, and we do in the Raiders, and if we have a site that can hold more games there than present because of the poor facilities, and I think poor is a reasonable word for it, then I think it's money well spent. And you're suggesting $250,000 would do that? Would give us the temporary bleachers and upgrade the washrooms as necessary?
Yes, in that magnitude.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I totally support that, because the thing is that we're quite a ways away, in my opinion, from making a deal with the school board. The school board has indicated that, and it's reasonable for them to assume they want fair market value for that property, which is worth millions. And that, to me, is in the distance. I'd much rather we do something with Caledonia Park right now and please the tenant we have and encourage more use of Caledonia with, I think, a reasonable investment to do so. And I'd certainly go in that direction. Councillor Kipp.
Is there any cultural funds available for this? It's part of our cultural planning. It's not just sport planning. So we could look at cultural funds to go towards this.
Oh, okay, Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Worship. The origin of my question was whether or not the Caledonia planning process will be postponed, as it says in the report, or not. And I still don't honestly have an answer to that without creating a motion. And to Councillor Anderson's question about whether or not we've made any public commitment, in fact, when this was first brought to our attention approximately 4 months or 5 months ago about the state of affairs at Caledonia Park as it relates to the conditions precedent for the BC Football Association in which to host major events, we made a commitment that we would upgrade the facilities to meet those requirements. I'm not suggesting that we did that here at this council table. I'm not saying that we, but it was a comment that was made publicly by our representatives to the people from the organizing body. So we did do that. But I just want an answer to our question, or to my question, if this process is being postponed while we entertain this new methodology that we're going back into discussions with the school board and other stakeholders.
Your Worship, everything's postponed until the council deals with the $250,000 budget item. And we're proposing not to do any further work on Caledonia in terms of planning, and that we enter into a joint use agreement with the school board for the Rotary. That's what we're proposing to do, unless you direct us otherwise.
Thank you. So that answers my question, that we have postponed any work on Caledonia Park. And to the second point of your response, that to re-enter into a joint use agreement with the school board as it relates to Rotary Bowl. As a person that sat on that joint use committee with Councillor Patchy and Councillor Sherry, that went nowhere, absolutely nowhere. So unless we have a plan of what we want to do and what we want accomplished and where it fits into our asset improvements, we'll be back to the same place we were 2.5, 3 years to 6 years ago, with temporary bleachers and temporary change rooms at Caledonia Park. It's interesting to me, how much money do you think we've spent on Caledonia Park and capital improvements in the last 25 to 50 years? Nothing. R&M, throw some seed out. To me, it's an embarrassment. It's an absolute embarrassment. Now we're talking about Rotary Bowl and Sroxman Stadium that was built on the blood, sweat, and tears of the volunteers of our community and the corporate community, and now we're talking about maybe having to buy it back? From who? It's embarrassing.
Okay, what I'd like to suggest, and if someone would like to make a motion, I think if we go back onto that same page 195, and it's the fourth paragraph down, the one that Councillor Beswick referred to earlier, that in the interim, I'd like to see somebody make a motion that we do proceed with the work which is expected to cost $250,000 and benefit Caledonia Park regardless of direction, and go ahead and at least accomplish something tonight on the park.
Your Worship.
Your Worship.
Yeah.
We have a motion on the floor right
Yes,
now.
we have.
and
We're
this is
going to do
staff
that, but I'm
recommendation.
suggesting that's what I'd like to see done. That's my the opinion at this point. We're back on to, it's just an information report that we're receiving.
That's correct. It's 10A.
And has it been moved and seconded?
It has been.
Okay.
It has been.
So all those in favor?
Your Worship, I think I was on the speakers list. My button
Oh, you're on?
is
Okay.
lit
Sorry.
up here. I'm happy to receive this for information.
Yeah, that's
I
what it is.
think the report should have been two reports, one on the Rotary Bowl discussions with the school district and one on proposals for the Caledonia Park improvements. I think that would have been cleaner. I think we would have been able to separate it in our minds easier if we had it in two different reports. But I think that what this report tells us is, one, that we're not subjecting this to the same kind of scrutiny that we are subjecting other asset improvements to, or asset maintenance to. You know, we don't have anybody calling for cost-benefit analysis. We don't have anybody calling for how many users, how much revenue is generated from this, how many games in a year. None of those things have been called for. There has been a decision, I don't know where it was made, that the improvements had to be made. And that I wasn't involved in any of those discussions. So it did come as a bit of a surprise to me when this came up. I think in response to the suggestion that we use the cultural funds, if we did decide to use cultural funds, we would have to subject this expenditure to very serious scrutiny. We would be looking at everything from do you want what color bleachers did you want, and or just can we get disposable ones? Shouldn't somebody else pay for this? Shouldn't the Raiders do, I don't know, maybe some tag days, whatever? I mean, I would expect that that would be the kind of scrutiny you would put this to. I'm really lean towards maintaining our assets and making sure that we put the funds into it. But I do think it's unfair to to make sort of suppositions that certain things are going to be supported, and then proceed on that understanding when there hasn't been a thorough discussion even about that. So happy to receive the report, happy to go down the road of an expenditure to make the park more useful to users. I'd like to see a little more information on why it's necessary, what the cost associated with each one of the expenditures is, those kinds of things, but happy to support this.
Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree on the some of the comparisons made relative to cost benefit and users and all that kind of stuff, and we've recently spent a couple $100,000 without doing that stuff on a cultural facility. However, moving forward, looking at spending $6 million, you're absolutely right, Councillor Brennan. We really need to do that. We really need to look at how many hours of service we can get out of that facility, whichever one it happens to be. I'm not interested in spending $6 million on Caledonia so that we can play six games a year on it. I want to see if we can make whatever field we choose the capital for football in Nanaimo. Be it high school, be it the Raiders, be it perhaps even a university team. And with that kind of investment, we've got to make sure that we're going to get a lot of hours out of it. And that's going to be one of the things we're going to have to talk about at Caledonia. Is the neighborhood going to stand for that thing being used at 10 o'clock at night? I don't know. We talked earlier about a possible outdoor amphitheater. I would think that'd be a great place to have it. But will the neighborhood stand for it? So we've got to have those conversations moving forward. I really believe that we need to I would like to, to support the mayor's suggestion that in addition to receiving the report, that we go ahead tonight and we approve the $250,000 expenditure for next year, and let's get on with it. So at least we've got something. The big championship is not until 2015. We'll be well on our way. We should start a dialogue with the community, engage the community on Rotary, Caledonia, whichever one we want. And that'll give us an opportunity to have that conversation.
Okay, Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think as we're going forward talking about spending additional funds outside of our budget process, I think we should go back to remembering just a few weeks ago about the grants that we're giving to certain organizations and how we shouldn't have actually been giving out the grants, but based on the statutory requirements by the province that they have to be in by October 31st, that we went and gave all those grants away. This same conversation about a certain cultural facility and a certain washroom that's in Diana Krall Plaza prompted us to go on a new budget process. So if we were going to look at potentially spending money, that we should actually refer this to the budget process for council to have deliberations on it and then move forward based on that, saying, is this, if our staff go and say, we're having a 0% increase, and then these are all the additional funds that council can spend, and then that's where we get to it. And if the because I know in our last budget cycle, we had conversations from council about making sure that we put the tax increase to 0. So I think it would be prudent for us to say the $250,000, if it's a council priority, that we send it to the budget discussions and council debate it in that forum and then move forward. But I think it would be premature and unfair in the sense of how we've already been moving forward, and that we should have some consistency based on what our budget process is going to be. So I wouldn't be in favor of voting in favor of a motion tonight saying let's spend $250,000. I would be in favor, though, of having this discussion during our budget process.
Okay, Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just finish off by trying to satisfy the motion that council direct staff to provide a comprehensive report on the cost of improvements.
We have the receipt motion on, I think, already.
Yeah, we'll have to
move receipt of the
Yeah, the one we've got now is just simply a motion to receive for information the report regarding Caledonia Park and Rotary Bowl. So why don't we deal with that? There's 2 more speakers. Councillor Greaves, do you want to deal with that one, or are you happy to?
I'll be very quick.
Okay.
I think we're jumping the gun. And I think we haven't even looked at Merle Logan Field, which is the AstroTurf fields that are all set up for football. Perfect location. Throw some bleachers in there, portable washrooms, perfect. So I think it's budget deliberations rather than just, but anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Fair point. So, Councillor, let me take you off. And Councillor Bestwick, you're on here.
We're going to receive this report for information.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. Well, I certainly don't disagree with Councillor Greaves at a roundtable discussion on facility enhancements and facility improvements and options and alternatives, and other than the school board and other than Rotary Bowl and other than Caledonia, and seeking out various options is absolutely a terrific roundtable discussion, not unlike what we do with festival planning and otherwise. So I would suggest then that I would like to make a motion that council direct staff to provide a comprehensive report on the cost of the improvements to bring Caledonia Park to BCFLA standards.
Second for discussion.
Okay. So let me get this down here. Moved and seconded. And Councillor Anderson?
I would like to amend it that that report be sent to our budget deliberations, not be returned to the council table here.
Well, I don't have a problem with it going back to budget deliberations on the assumption that we'll all be attending.
Okay. Councillor Bestwick's motion was seconded.
That's great, Your Worship. We got the motion.
And so
you
I
need me
don't
to
know
repeat
whether
it?
we're going to call this a friendly amendment from Councillor Anderson, but
We didn't get the amendment. If you can repeat the amendment, we can vote on the amendment or do it a friendly amendment as well.
So what I've asked for is a report, a comprehensive report on bringing the direct staff to provide a comprehensive report on the cost of the improvements to bring Caledonia Park to BC Football League standards.
Correct. That's a motion on the floor.
If somebody else wants to make a motion that it only be discussed at budget deliberations, then I would encourage them to do that.
So I would like to make an amendment that it be added to the end of that motion, that this be referred to the budget deliberations as a separate addition to the motion.
Perfect. So now council need to deliberate or second that motion.
yeah, so is there a seconder for the amendment? Okay. So we should vote first on the amendment?
That's correct.
And I think, does everyone understand, or do we need to go through this? So on the amendment, all those in favor? Opposed? Looks like, Councillor Bestwick, Mayor Tan opposed, Balance Councillor in favor. So the motion does pass, and to send it off to, sorry. Now we're going to go on the main motion.
Correct, as amended.
So all those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Bestwick opposed, Balance Council in favor, motion passes. Okay, let's go in.
Zoning bylaw number 4500-038, the RA313, site-specific zoning amendment for a fast food restaurant within the community corridor, COR 3 at, is it 1635 Bowen?
1835.
18 there, my thing I was drawing on my paper, I couldn't read it. Bowen Road, be adopted.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And
Move the management and protection of tree bylaw 2013 number 7126 to regulate, prohibit, and impose requirements in relation to trees pass first reading.
second motion, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
I'll move the management and protection of trees bylaw number 2013 number 7126 pass second reading.
Second motion, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
The management and protection of trees bylaw number 2013 number 7126 pass third reading.
Moved and second, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. So it says note,
No
Council.
receipt of correspondence.
Okay, is there a seconder? All those in favor? Now, any business arising from the correspondence? Now, because we do need to have a motion. Yeah, and I'd
Move
like.
that Councillor Brennan and alternate Councillor Anderson be reappointed to the.
Councillor Brennan has indicated she will, and the alternate is also in concurrence with that.
I'll second that.
So it's moved and seconded. And so I think for the record, it means that Councillor Brennan has reconfirmed her position on the Vancouver Island Real Estate Library Board, I beg your pardon, Freudian slip, and Councillor Anderson will be the alternate. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. And now we move down to notice of motion. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have noticed, it's getting late, noticed that at the intersection of Comox and Terminal, that there is, there down really to the Campbell Street is, the sidewalk there is very bumpy, non-existent, whatever. And it's actually quite a hazard for people with strollers. I've noticed them struggling along that bumpy piece, and people with disabilities as well. People with canes find it hard to walk on. And so,
conflict.
I move that staff be requested to prepare a report regarding options to improve pedestrian safety along Highway 19A between Campbell Street and Comox Road.
Okay, so that's a notice of motion. It'll appear at the next agenda, so there's no vote to be taken on that. And so now, any other business on that? And we move into, sorry?
On the list.
He's on the list, he said. He's on your speakers list.
Councillor Anderson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify something that was mentioned earlier about the Chemainus Theatre, and that is that it does have a government sponsor as well, the British Columbia Arts Council, the Government of British Columbia, the Corporation of the District of North Cowichan, and Canadian Heritage as well. So it is supported by local government, the federal government, and provincial government as well.
Could I add to that? It's interesting, we got an email from a really great person here in Nanaimo, Holly Bright. She also mentions the theater group on Bowen Road, which also referred, is ineligible because they're non-professional. And in fact, to me, that, like you say, there we are, we're giving the professionals money, and we'll do that for them through government grants, but we won't give the amateurs or the people that are building that professional system. That seems odd to me that the government doesn't sponsor the volunteer groups. That just is odd. Thank you.
Yes.
It is 5 to 11. Are we going to go through past 11 with question period, or can we make sure that we go home at an appropriate time?
Only if there's a motion to continue.
I'll make a motion to adjourn at 11 o'clock.
Is there a seconder?
We don't need a motion. We need a motion to extend.
Extend. So.
That's correct. We don't need a motion to adjourn at 11. You need a motion to extend it if you wish.
Just get up and leave at 11? Is that what happens?
Everything falls apart.
Okay, so we're moving on to question period. Sorry? Agenda items only?
I'll try to make them very quick.
Well, you have 4 minutes exactly. Hang on, let me turn you on. Here, good.
Oh, sorry, Ron Bowen, 3165 King Richard Drive. Regarding secondary suites and duplexes without DCCs, who pays the costs of the additional population, police, fire, water, sewer, et cetera, if no DCCs are paid? And remember that if we had 10% of our housing in duplexes, we could go up to 20, increase double our population overnight with this. I'm really quite concerned about the fact that we ignore DCCs. Who is going to pay for this if all those extended services if we double population with no DCCs?
You're talking about only on the addition of secondary suites and duplexes?
I'm talking about that, but DCCs in general. As you know, we're way overdue for a review. But I'm talking about the secondary suites here because it was specifically mentioned that there would be no DCCs for the addition of suites and duplexes.
Okay. Is there a comment on that one? Toby?
Capital cost burden is already in place because the floor space exists. What we're proposing to bring before council is that the bylaws are amended to allow these places, existing floor spaces to be turned into suites. So there is no increase in capital cost burden because it already exists today.
But is there not an expectation that they will pay for water and sewer for a separate unit or not?
Oh yes, very much so. User rates they will. And if someone built a duplex with suites in from scratch, they would pay DCCs.
At that point.
And police, water, and fire. That's taxation. Okay. What element of the report about how we fund the Colliery Dam project was different from how we fund any project, ever?
Nothing.
Thank you. Does council perceive any relation between regional emissions and the incinerator from which they refused to request omission?
They refused to request omission? What does that mean?
You requested, there was an opportunity for the city to write to Metro and say we do not want consideration. That was not done. But yet we're talking about an emissions, regional emissions, and yet is there no connection between that and a new incinerator here?
I think the indication from council was that rather than make a knee-jerk decision and turn something down without listening, we did want to see if there was some additional information or background we could get on it. Doesn't mean, as far as I'm concerned, that it's a done deal, so to speak. I just think we wanted the courtesy of at least knowing more about the plan before it may be turned down ultimately, but that's to be determined. Councillor McKay, you wanted to add something?
Well, we always have to look at nets as well, don't we? So, for example, if we take Peaks Hill, New York, I'm doing a little bit of research on, one of the facilities that's adjacent to the WTE down there have discontinued the use of burning natural gas, period. They are now using all of the waste energy off of that plant. Is it possible that we can implement some of those pluses and minuses through this sort of process, and in many others as well? Harmax come online with some of their, with what they're doing out there now. Are there industries that we can use to as credits on some of those things?
Mr. Chair, it's up. Mr. Chair, I just would make one comment before it's, it is 11 now, so the meeting's over, so we'll have to wait till next time.
Okay.
Motion to request I have one last very quick one, but
okay,
it's
well,
up
go
to
ahead.
you.
Go ahead. If it's one last one, and it has to be quick, you're on.
That last one is, I didn't understand when I read about the value for money review, why we're doing that. Is there a problem, or do we always do this in certain kinds of projects, or why are we letting out a contract to do a review of this particular project?
Are you talking about the Corax issue? Is that what it's about? I think just very quickly, if I can, my understanding of it is that this was the first 5-year contract that we looked at. We would now like to have a third party, if you wish, or have it reviewed to see did we find the economies of scale we tried to find out, because there are other opportunities to go into long-term relationships. If this one worked, we might look at it. If this one doesn't work, we're not going to look at it.
Okay, thank you.
Prudence.
That's
Okay.
That's what I was looking for.
Moved and seconded. We stand adjourned. Spencer, you can go home now.